the cabal,
It's
the
recording now, so
cabal of group chats dictating culture on threads, but it's not real.
no, it's
Wow.
all like a fabric of our connected imaginations, and that's what's really really good about this entire thing is that we all just made this happen somehow, and that's a really wild thought.
This
What,
is
that
my
all
dream
three of us
book
just,
rotation, at least threads version. I'm delighted. What a year-end treat. I'm so happy to see you both.
I mean, I'm happy to just have any communication in English whatsoever. So if I switch into French throughout this, please just remind me because my main language now is French.
Oh my God, when I fucking lived in Japan in 2006, so, this was pre-social media, I was so fucking desperate for English that I watched Full House every single night, which actually is really popular in Japan.
Oh,
Um, they
BRB, I
have
have to do
Japanese
this setting real
subtitles.
quick. BRB.
Okay, sure.
Uh,
But yeah, you
Okay,
for
he'll be
teacher
back.
English.
Yeah, I'm at that point where I'm done with French school and I've been using more French not being in school and not being at work all the time that my brain is sickly, it's fried. I lose my English words constantly now. I switch into French and switch into English and it annoys everyone.
Yeah, no, living inside of a second language is absolutely exhausting. And, as a white girl who grew up in the suburbs, more or less, I was grateful to have that experience, if only for a year, because shit.
I mean, I've been here 5 years now, 4 or 5 years, and it took me that long to get into a Fransation program. But now that I'm in it, it's like the difference between being a second class citizen and being a part of the dominant culture is
oh,
outstanding. It's all of a sudden my life has changed because I can conjugate my words enough that people don't just switch right. In the French culture, if you're bad at French, they'll switch right into English. But if you're
Yeah,
good at French, they spend the entire time correcting you. So
sure.
it's this mind meld of trying to figure out what's going on. Does this person hate me or not? And
It's
it,
so stressful. And I mean, I was experiencing it in Japan where the culture is very passive aggressive and polite. So it was just hopeless trying to figure out which faux
I
pas
got the
I was committing
opposite.
at any given point.
I got nothing but rudeness, nothing but rudeness out of the
I
French.
love the French. I'm a mega fan of the French, as you know.
You
Um,
can have them.
oh my God.
well, despite my mother being from the only French-speaking part of the entire fucking United States, she has a French name. Her name is Geraldine. She's not French, and she didn't teach me a fucking word of French.
Well, in Maine, so my family, my father's side is from the same area as yours in Maine.
Really, that's
Uh,
amazing. I do not. I mean, those are towns of like 300 people. I never
I
meet
know.
Canadians. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was full-blooded Acadian, and now as I've been going through French school, I constantly have moments where I'm just like, my grandmother was a bitch. Now that I understand the stuff that she was saying to kids, I'm like, I fucking hate that
Oh
lady.
my God,
Christ.
there's such the French, that part of the country is so cunty, and it's the French
Oh my
influence. And
God.
honestly, it took me 35 fucking years of life to actually connect those bits of my personality to the fact that this very niche subculture was pressing down on me. I don't know. I could talk about that for hours. That's not what we're here to do. Highway.
No, is way back.
Yep, I'm back.
Okay,
Hello.
perfect.
Um, yeah, so okay, cool. Everything's recording. We're good. All right. Yeah, I opened up a trial account for this so that we can like talk for however long we want to.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Good. Oh my God, he froze. At least for
Uh,
me.
yeah, he froze for me too.
Way, you're frozen.
um,
We
You're
lost you completely, Wade.
going on here?
Yeah, a little bit. Come on. I told you that's a New England pour. I at least put
Um,
lemonade in mine to cover up how strong it was.
lemonade. No, this is expensive whiskey. It actually isn't. It was like an end of year special purchase. It's Writer's Tears.
Okay.
which is an Irish whiskey made in a Japanese
I
cask.
know.
It
I
was
know.
it was an expensive bottle. Not a whiskey expert, but it doesn't taste like it.
Have, have you, while we wait for Wei, have you,
Oh yeah, I'm back. Hello?
oh,
Are
you
you guys
are?
still?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, so like I said, Zoom's cool, I guess. And so Emily, like word, I'm guessing you and I both spend our days thriving all day, as well as Brett too. We don't really have a job, do we? Like,
I'm quasi-employed. I have income streams. I was actually working, I'm such a fucking girl boss that I wasn't really able to be on the internet for my entire adult life. But I quit corporate America 2 years ago, so mid-pandemic for several reasons. The main one being that my father died, and it was like a year-long process to kind of get my family back on track after that happened. But yeah, I'm slightly employed.
okay. I mean,
But I do have more time than the average person to go down internet rabbit holes and
right.
become an extremely niche influencer on a struggling
Yeah,
app.
yes.
Extremely niche influencer.
Extremely niche,
I
yes.
think 17K on Threads, a niche app to begin with, is I think that's pretty niche.
You're doing much better than the rest of us.
It's been bizarre.
I mean, and picking up the trad wife community is still shocking to me, where they just looked at you and went trad wife and never listened or read a single thing that you posted.
It was fucking terrifying. It's essentially the 1 year anniversary of me going, I guess, viral for the first time in my life. I don't even really know what viral means on Threads, but I was so fucking scared because the reason I was private was because I was employed. I'm a professional. I can't have people thinking I'm a trad wife on the internet when I'm employed. But yeah, that's what kickstarted my Threads account.
And
That's
and
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and Wei, your job is essential. I'm the only one that's actually employed, but I'm uncancelable because my hands do my job now. I quit the freaking corporate world years and years, 10 years, 15 years ago now. And then
That is
Wei,
the
you're
best part of being
yeah, I know.
unemployed.
I am
It's
in
like you're
corporate,
not
I'm
cancelable.
actually
Like,
like the
what
most
power do you have over me?
yeah,
I
I'm
just assume you command robots and AI to do your job for you, Wei.
no, so I code in this language called Visual Basics, which is a really, really old school language. And that's how I'm very much aware that like there's so much talks about like robot apocalypse and the speed at which technology is going. And that was like my mindset before I started working in this industry is like knowing that when you're in the field, you start to realize how concrete so much of the hype in technology is. I work in the financial sector, and so I work with ATM data. So I get ATM data every single night. And so if I put in my debit card number into my database, I can actually see all the locations I've been to for the last few years, which is actual power, which is fucking insane. Yeah, exactly.
That
That's
okay.
so
I'm
scary.
woo,
That's
I need to
so
take a drink after that.
Yeah, I am literally
Yes.
hiding in Canada away from my corporate oligarchs and knowing that they can track me now through my ATM as well scares me.
Yes,
We're
ATM.
tracked
So like,
absolutely everywhere. It's insane. And but that way your posts about finance are at least in my memory, I was trying to think of how did I meet Way? And it was because your posts about investments were so good. We have the same investment
oh
strategy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Like
yes.
him and
Good
finally
times,
a
good times, good
normal
one
times.
thing
person
all three of us have in
investing in
common.
a normal way, and not
Hmm.
like an insane person.
Well,
I
that's the thing is
read
that I came from
when he
that
was getting
extreme.
canceled.
The thing is that I came from that insane background. Like I lost about $7,000 trading options when I first discovered Robinhood.
Oh
A
no.
lot, a lot of a
It
lot
was
of
a
this shit
fun.
came from insanity, and it came from this heightened idea of what money is, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm also a first generation immigrant. I know nothing about the financial market before 2016, before 2016, 2017. And 2016, 2017 was a very interesting year that took the US, from a neoliberal state to a much more neoliberal dictatorial state that's
Yeah.
controlled by Trump. And so that
Yeah.
shift in economic policies was a really shitty way to jump into the financial market
It
because you're
so
just
was. Oh my God, I had a totally different entry because
yeah.
the entire reason that I'm able to be unemployed was because I was a teacher making almost no money, but I was investing at the absolute trough of the
Hmm.
market in 2008. And yeah, even a 5-year difference, you have a totally different relationship with the stock market.
Yeah, even a 5 year like difference, like, and I was taught by Wall Street bets,
Yeah. Oh,
which
oh,
Hold on, I
yes,
gotta show
that
you my
makes a
Wall
lot more
Street
sense
bets
so
now.
stuff
you
too.
weren't on the Bogleheads forum.
No, I was on literally Wall Street Bets where we see, we see loss posts of people losing their entire inheritance on a daily, multiple times a day, and that was a really,
Congratulating them.
I
and
was getting my
congratulating them,
financial
yes,
information from the internet before the internet became completely fucked.
The
right, and
Motley
The
that was
Fool.
information
a
was
really
better.
interesting, like, cool system to see because that was actually one of the first times that you kind of, for me, to see what Foucault talks about, which is like the technologies of power and also resistance.
Yeah.
Um, and like I can literally just connect Foucault to everything. That's why his frameworks are so impressive and so powerful. And so and I like to take his moniker because it's like every single system, concept, hobby I see, I'm like Foucault, 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 Foucault. You can literally
Oh, it's
throw me
everywhere. And well, we should
everywhere.
clarify,
We can
guys,
Yeah,
talk
because
you
about
there's,
gotta
Disney movies. We can
clarify
talk
for
about Mulan. We can
I
talk
have
about
to do
Brett
my
Foster,
potato
teacher
noggin
thing.
and
stand
the
up, your teacher system. That's very, very, very Foucauldian right there. The entire prison school industry. I'm sure you
Yes.
notice how how the school structure is very much like a prison where you when you're teaching in the classroom, for example, there's no dialogue. The dialogue is very, very one-sided. The teacher talks to the student rather than a circular formation where everybody can see each other and everyone has a dialogue with each other. The formation of the classroom is forward rather than backwards, unless it's a very open style of communication, which is very antithetical to a lot of public educations, right? So if Emily is a very good teacher, she will restructure her classroom from a one-sided structure so that the students cannot talk to each other. The students do not know what's going behind them, but the teacher, Emily, can see everyone within the classroom from the forward to the backwards. That's a Foucauldian technique called panopticism, which
why
allows
don't
one person to see multiple angles, like a guard within a prison.
so
Wait,
the
so
average
we need
person is
to
not
wait,
like,
guys,
Yes,
yeah,
gentlemen,
they
go ahead.
don't understand who this guy is. So why don't you do
gentlemen, yes.
some due
Hmm.
diligence
We
and give
have
the
to sort
potato
of,
noggin some ideas about who this guy is?
Yes.
yeah. So, hi, guys. We have to remember that people from Threads are listening to this and they're like, what the fuck are we talking about? Who are these
Yeah.
people? But hi, we're Emily, Bread, and Way. And we are just three fucking idiots who have accounts on.
Really, we're just three kids. It's
Um,
true.
But
I'm gonna venture to guess I'm the biggest idiot out of all of us.
we came together today in the very depressing last week of the year, strain, where time has no meaning, to discuss among so many, so many other things, I'm sure, but we're talking about influence, social media, and then essentially like what happened in 2024 on the internet, on social media, where we all met each other. And one of us is a philosopher, one of us is a high school English teacher, and one of us is a welder in Canada
I'm an idiot. You can
who
just say an
also
idiot.
has, but you also have, I'm guessing, extensive experience in the
Accessibility shortcuts.
2000s.
20 items. Voice guide. Off.
Sorry.
In the
Close.
2000s, sort of comedy and media culture.
So I'll make it as quick as possible. I was a publicist. I was a publicist for fashion companies. That was how I got my start, which I just did a lure drop, and people are like, "Oh my God, you work fashion. You always look like an idiot."
Also,
I'm like, "I
Pornhub too? What the fuck, Brad?
know." I've done.
Christ.
And
I
he
can
also knows everything there is to know about women's bras.
Yeah.
I was fact checking your information because I do actually know more than the average woman about bras. And all of your information was good. Keep going, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, how do I put this? I didn't reach the highest levels of the media landscape, but I
Sure.
controlled a lot more than you guys understand. And there's a reason why I ran away to Vermont where I could carry a gun. And there's a reason why I now live in another country. I know more about, I can call things that are going to happen 5 years in advance. I have a history of doing this. All the things that are going on in pop culture, I left that industry because I saw them going on and I tried to change things within my industry, and the backlash was severe. Uh,
Sure.
but I was one of the first Twitter influencers. I had 250,000 followers. I was a stand-up comic because as a publicist, I thought, I'll do it myself. I'll get myself famous, if I'm doing it for other people. So celebrity, the back end of how your media works, all of that stuff is what this uh, idiot savant happens to have a lot of
Well,
experience in.
I think this conversation came out of a post that I made that went pretty wide. I think it has 1.5 likes, 1.5K likes, which is a lot on Threads, but it was about the fakeness of internet culture. Or internet culture? Influencer culture on the
Influencer culture.
internet, influencer culture. And I told a very quick story about how I used to belong to a weightlifting gym and influencers would come in, snap a pic, or in the parking lot, they'd snap a pic of the building and say, like, just did an amazing workout. It's all fake.
Everything is fake.
What is
It's
the effect, and this is where Way comes in, is, what is the effect of all of that fakeness on culture, and where are we headed as we stare down the barrel of a Trump administration?
So can I give a quick, I'll try and keep it short, foundation of why we even switched to influencer culture
Okay.
from the marketing and money side, which is really what drives society in America. So I was there at the advent of the popularized influencer and everything. They were just sort of popping up. Instagram hadn't perfected everything. So it was a lot of blogs at this point. And we started off in the fashion industry with a more traditional approach of attacking editors, Cosmo, Elle, these sort of influential hubs for the niches of where we were trying to get. But towards the end of my career, we started seeing that influencers themselves were easier to track. It was easier to get numbers from. It was easier to be able to gauge your actual influence on what you had them do, because if they have 18,000 readers every month, and all of a sudden after you have them do a blog post on you and you get within those markets or those niches, all of a sudden you get a 5 or 6% uptick on your sales. Well, you can directly correlate that to an influencer way easier than you can with a magazine that has, I'm going to use some industry terms, things like pass along rates. So when you are targeting Elle or Cosmo or any of these, they also give you what's called a pass along rate, which is how often Cosmo gets left on a bench and someone picks it up and starts reading, or how often, depending on what page you're at. So people turn to the middle of the magazine more often than anything else. So those spots are more high value for that, and they cost more. So it was more cost effective to go to these influencers that had numbers for you, that were easier to track everything, better to see where your money was going. But the problem was you're putting the power in the hands of the individual there, and their ego started skyrocketing into what you have now. I have plenty of other stories and culture and about all of this stuff, but I'm not going to steal the limelight here. I just want to give people the basics and the beginnings of why and how this started, and it was money. It was money and the ability to track a single person's influence on the market itself.
And that makes complete sense. So before this corporate job, I came from SEO content culture. And
SPO is for the
SEO
people admin.
SEO is search engine optimization culture.
Yeah.
So every single blog post you read on a popular blog website that has ads, that has different marketing drives, meaning that there's always a goal for the reader, which is why they have this thing called call to action, CTA.
Always a call to action on every
It's
piece of
always a
marketing material.
So I was working at I was working at this small startup for about 6 years, where the goal of the startup is to help people create jobs and help people start jobs and help people start their own businesses. Um, which is like, okay, so and that's where like the executives are like, okay, we're gonna help people, and that was the framing, right? We instead of saying, hey, we want to drive profit by getting these people to click on links, um but instead this was the start of kind of like this is also the perfect period where a lot of the startup culture started to accelerate too, during the mid 2020 and during the mid 2013
The
to about
2010s. Yeah.
exactly 2010s, where there are so much money coming from Silicon Valley and other funding seed sites that are people are just neoliberals are just pretty much throwing out money into all these places, and we were
Yeah.
able to kind of like question, okay, so they were framing it as a way to help people, which is true. It is a way of framing and helping people, right? And that's kind of
Yeah.
like that's the marketing speak right there in every single company. Let's help people with more information. Let's help them with free information, so that instead of going to Wikipedia or instead of going to different Google sites, looking up state requirements, such as like how do you start a business in Michigan, for example, you have to go through the Michigan's the Secretary of State websites, and you have to go to all these random places. Let's just put all the information in one location. However, and that's the selling point, is that here is free, all the free information. However, it still takes effort. So if you want to skip the effort, click on our affiliate links, click
Yeah.
on our partners, and it was really it was really eye-opening to see how much what is content and what is actual output of insight, and that content to authenticity bifurcation that was like my first actual experience with like, okay, the shit I read on the internet are not real. Everything I read on the internet are not real, because there has been so many layers of extra bureaucracy about it that requires, okay, the question of who's in control, where is the funding going into, because no one wants to spend their time for free. No one wants to provide these free documents except for me, even though I also have my own angle, which is to liberate, and I want people to read stuff. And I, I think me and Emily, even Brad, all three of us, we're using our own resources to create this pocket of resistance. The incentive for us is trying to liberate, but who knows, right? If someone offers us $5 million, I'm gonna probably switch sides. But that's not the point. The
So
point being,
here, let me interrupt for just a second so that I can give the counterpoint and how the person who worked in SEO and all of this stuff and understands how I started to view it. While you see it as a tool and a power, and yes, you have your own angle and everything. Part of the reason why I got out
I
of
did not
the
hear what you said, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Can you? Okay. So just real quick, I'm gonna show people the opposite side from what
I'm gonna turn on closed caption. That way I can probably see what you're saying. Show caption.
Okay.
Show caption. Speak again.
So when you have SEO, right? For a lot of people at its beginning, it was, well, I'll throw more money on this so that I'll get more eyes, or I'll do this. And it started off very egalitarian. I don't know if that's the correct word or
Egalitarian.
not. Egalitarian, yeah. Again, the big
Yeah.
Irish potato noggin here. It started off very welcoming. It was for everyone. Hey, if you have an extra $5, well, then for this week you can get more eyes on your stuff. But then it started monopolies. Then you started having large corporations coming in and dropping huge amounts to the point where it stopped competition. Most of your food comes from the same five major companies and their umbrella brands. Well, when those people start having 2.5, 2.8 million that they're dropping into SEO, and the average guy is still trying to scratch by with his maybe like $2,000 marketing budget, it removed the freedom that the internet was at first. You know, while you guys may see this as, oh, it was investments in this, it was pushing people towards this. When I started seeing that, I started seeing that the smaller brands that I wanted to work with, I worked with major fashion brands, but they were all evil. So when I tried to diversify and work with sort of smaller upstarts and everything, I found that without these massive budgets, all of a sudden the internet was becoming a monopoly. And unless you were willing to work with Google, you know, it started off with Google just like, hey, we're happy to finally making money. And then Google all of a sudden had things to say about what you were trying to promote. And so it became sort of putting yourself on bended knee to Google saying, we want this format because we see this format as effective, as opposed to what your market research and everything your company is doing and seeing what works with their fans. So I don't know if it's Foucaultian or not, but you started to see a severe power imbalance between major corporations, major money, and the smaller guys who were up and coming, who are the actual guys who drive the market. People don't understand in a lot of stuff with fashion. It's not necessarily the major brands that are driving all of the money. A lot of the smaller upstarts that people are looking for are the ones making the investments into new engineering, into new products and everything. And that's actually kept down because of all of the money into search engine optimization.
Google
So
is essentially, I mean, I feel like Google is so much more useless than it was 20 years
Yeah,
ago. It is so
I switched.
incredibly difficult to find unvarnished information about any niche topic. There is this concept, if we're going to talk about fashion, which you all know is like one of my major interests, there's this idea of the otaku, which is a Japanese word meaning roughly translating to big nerd.
Mhm.
But like, say you wanted the very best information about the very best leather shoes, there are otaku groups online that are discussing, you know, truly simply because of their passion for the topic, because they're interested in some kind of mastery over this subject. They're not being motivated by profit. They're not influencers, right? They're just
Mhm.
hobbyists. And that was the internet that I grew up with, and that, you know, because I'm 41 years old, I'm an elder millennial. I've watched the internet be born. It used to be a place where just enthusiasts could share knowledge, and now it has become corrupted by profit. And you have influencers who are, everything they do is a commercial, and everything feels like a scam. Everything feels really low quality and dubious. And because because search engine optimization has perverse incentives, you can't even fact check anything that they say anymore. And, you
Can
know,
we just make a
that's
slight change
where
to
we
your
are.
wording? You
Mhm.
keep saying feels. Feels is incorrect. Is. Everything is cheap and dubious now. Everything is a scam now. It's not that it feels that way. It's that we live in a society on the internet now that encourages these scams, that encourages you to monetize all of this stuff. So while you're saying it
Yeah.
feels like, I want to add a little bit more solidarity to it in that you're right. It is a scam now. It's not just that it feels that way.
And I'm so interested in why everything in influence feels like a scam, and why the internet feels like one big scam. And I have theories about that if we want to start getting philosophical way.
so
Well,
I oh go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say I can touch on some of the functionality of that and how it's come about, and a lot of it is bottom line. But I don't want to dominate the conversation in any means. So continue on, Way.
Yeah.
So I can actually give you guys a direct example um from the power of SEOs. So on the website, on the company that I used to work for, we have this thing called okay, so on the topic of search engine optimization, let me share with you. Me as a host cannot share things. Well, that's stupid. Anyways, so there's this web. So I was actually going to pull up this website called Ahref, which are words which is a dashboard that allows you to keep track of keywords and keywords and different rankings of keywords across multiple websites. So, for example, my website is simplephilosopher.com. If I want to actually put an effort and kind of spread my wings within that content SEO channel, I can use this website called Ahref. And this is not sponsored, by the way. I've been working with this shit for a long ass time. Where you can see, let's say that I want to open up a business in Michigan, and I want to open up I want to write a blog about this post in Michigan. I have to organize my content in a way that Google sees it, and in a way that Google actually pushes your content up. And Google never technically gives any of us this algorithm, and this is before this thread algorithm. This is before. This is why Google was so popular and powerful. It's like Google literally controlled the narrative of truth. Google has this power of truth. They still do, but right now the narrative is slightly shifting towards much more community-oriented truth, which is what Emily was talking about, and how these otakus who gives out these lived experiences as truth came from a genuine place of authenticity and hobby, and they care. And that's why ChatGPT takes in Reddit data. It's not because Reddit is valuable. The Reddit is valuable because it has humans producing actual content. Before this idea of the dead internet theory, which is that all content is generated. But for the last 20 years, since 2006, Reddit has been a community, an open source community of dialogue and interrogation. And there's always this like trend of monopolization where when a Reddit group becomes too powerful and too strong, content becomes trash. Because that's when moderations actually come in, and that's when there are these much more market-driven purposes behind a lot of the Reddit communities. But the power of Reddit community was that otaku nature, was that nerdy nature, it was that niche nature where TikTok now is kind of like trying to bifurcate from that level of turning and neoliberalizing, converting from hobby and funsies to marketable driven forces. So back to the concept of SEO optimization. When you're writing an article, you're constantly using websites like Ahrefs and similar websites like Google Keyword Analytics to see how your keywords within the article matches up to the other trends. What are other websites in that similar ranking system doing in their articles? And let's see if we can pick out what they're using, and let's see if we can copy some of those ideas. And so you have this normalization or converting from unique articles that has actual spins to a much more side rail guarded article.
Homogenized
article, homogenized, normalized, kind of neoliberalized article that turns into a content to be packaged and sold. So when I had this realization when I was reading Ryan Holiday's book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, in which he pretty much validated I don't know if you've read this book or read it or not, but Ryan Holiday is a huge podcaster, a huge Stoic person, and some of his works are great because it gives you this direct truth of what the fuck is going on within culture. I read this book in like 2018 when I was working at this SEO content company, and I was just like, holy shit, I've been a driving figure in this discourse or this idea or this like general cultural narrative or the vibe of truth
God, I hate that
production.
word.
Yes, but it's a word that people can understand when I say discourse.
I know.
Discourse is a complicated term, but this cultural feeling of like, holy shit, I forgot what I was saying. The vibe of this article, it hits on multiple points because there's a connectedness in which you feel like you've seen the same memes as I do, and that's why I think memes are such a powerful signifier or a symbol or a thing in which everyone sees, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I get that point, and that's one of my techniques is that I use a fuck ton of memes within high discourse, which is what academics would be like considered, to be like fancy pinky up reading versus low discourse, which is like the average whatever reading that people think it's to be low or uncultured, but there is no distinction between high and low discourse. There is just words and being produced. Go ahead, Red.
Well, yeah, there's no distinction between high and low discourse anymore because we've become very intolerant of, I would say, of high discourse because we're all obsessed with equality, right? And I have so much to say about this idea of influencing and this idea that so much of the internet is a scam, so much of influencer content is a scam, and
It's all a scam.
it's all a scam. It's all a scam. However, in some ways, the influencer economy and the digital economy has democratized so many luxuries that were previously only available to a privileged few. And some of those are like fast fashion, right? Like you can have these extensive wardrobes. You can have your consumer goods delivered super quickly. Uber gave us private car service. Apps give us like meal delivery. You can hire a servant to go fetch your food for you. But influencing itself has also democratized fame. Like now, anybody who gets on the internet and starts yapping can grow an audience. And there are these theories that when you start raising the standard of living for too many people, there's going to be a really aggressive backlash to that because you cannot raise the standard of living for the masses to a point it becomes unsustainable. You all die
So-
as a result. We drown
That is
made of our own garbage.
that is what we called in the early 2000s aspirational branding, where
Yeah.
we would purposely show people that we thought, hey, this looks like an everyman. Let's give him a Hermes bag. So
Yeah.
that the every person, then their goal became that Hermes bag. Their goal stopped being, oh, I want to make money, I want to invest it, I want to get out of this cycle. You purposely created what's called aspirational branding, which was people would aspire to a lifestyle that they could never actually reach, but they could get tastes of it now. Like
Yes.
Hermes puts out a belt, they'll never afford the bag, but
You
now
can
they can
get
get a belt.
coffee at the Louis Vuitton cafe. Like you
Yeah.
can't buy a Louis Vuitton bag, but you can visit
And
the
you can
store
take
and they buy
pictures
the
of that.
coffee.
And
Yeah.
you can take pictures
But-
of that and fake it and make it seem like that's part of your lifestyle is going in and getting coffee there. But realistically, once you have that cup, you can wash that cup out a million times. It's got your name on it. It doesn't. I don't know. But you can reuse that cup in a million other pictures now that you have it.
Yes.
So so Emily and Brett both brought up one really good point, which is that there has been this democratization going on, right? So this is where kind of like this is where so on Threads there is this really awesome philosopher and brother that I follow, a smiling Sisyphus, brilliant thinker, always be posting up academic shit that I have to even Google, and I have to even take out a fucking dictionary because
I got no
fuck-
chance then.
like I have to actually I have to look up this word called prelapsarian, which is this word that means before the fall of men. Exactly. It's a conceptual concept. And I was just like, okay. So one of the biggest contentions that I have with Smiling Sisyphus as a Foucauldian is that Foucault has this idea of that power is so overwhelming that you cannot escape it. And that is where the
power is everywhere.
Power is everywhere. You cannot escape it. However, where there's also resistance, meaning that even though there's a shift from mainstream power to influencer power, the shifting process also creates new luxuries, such as the democratization of luxuries, such as that more people have Uber power, more people Uber as in like the ride service culture. more people have choices to do more fast fashion, which is also problematic. However, they get more choices. This shift going from a hierarchical up and down power, which is like for in the past, brands has to call managers, like what Brett was talking about. How they have to call contact, they have to call your manager for these media companies to produce an article, whereas now there's this direct connection between the company that wants to advertise and the SE and the influencer. So that shifting right there is kind of it is a power dynamic shift that
Okay,
goes
so
from
let
that.
me
Oh,
explain this process to you guys before we move forward of how we actually did it, how we turned someone from an otaku, which you guys, that's your term, into an influencer, right? Because every
mhm,
influencer started off as an otaku.
That's
We
exactly
don't,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
we
mhm,
don't want to target someone that doesn't already have some sort of audience. Then we are creating everything and it's really expensive. But if we find that otaku who's driving the sales of 17,000 people, we'll just take Emily's number, for example, and we see this person and we go, what's his price? Because
mhm,
every single human being, this is your power dynamic, has a price. Because this person aspires to get these objects, to get,
mhm.
let's say that they're an otaku for pretty ballerinas. It's an Italian flats, ballet flats company, okay? All
Tech
right, and let's
products.
I
say,
prefer Repetto, but that's all right.
okay, all right. Well, listen, I worked with pretty ballerinas for years, so I'm gonna
Okay.
use them because I know it, okay? So you want these products, right? That's your goal is so we start off. It's boiling frog syndrome. It's like, well, hey man, we see that you have a lot of people listening to you. Would you like to be the first one to try out these shoes? Would you be the first one to see these, perhaps? Uh, and with that, you've already got a taste for this of, oh my God,
Mhm,
well, I am the influencer. This company values my opinion. They want to give me this product. And then so that's how it starts at first because we have leverage over you. We have the
mhm,
money, we have the budget. You at a certain point are not making millions of dollars. You're looking to get to that point. And essentially we want to radicalize you. That's really a lot of the steps that we take is the same as terrorists take in
As in
radicalizing people.
radicalize, as in like force you to monetize your hobby, like every
Force you to
millennial is
monetize
told
your
to do.
hobby,
Monetize
force
that hobby.
force you not only to monetize your hobby, but now we monetize your life.
Oh,
mhm,
for
And
sure.
you
Yeah.
have to keep up these presentations now because there's such a thirst for content. So now you, no matter how much money you're making, cannot keep up with the amount of content you have to create to keep your own income stream going. So it's a means of creating a modern day corporate brand slave. So now you have a guy that went from maybe 17,000. Now with our money, our backing, our products and everything, people start to think he's special. Okay, well now this guy's making $80,000 a year and he thinks he has big britches. So what we'll do is when he starts pushing back too much, well, let's take all these products away from you. We don't like your opinion anymore. We don't like what you're doing. We're not going to give you the things that you need, and we're going to show you that we're your lifeline now. We're the ones in control of you, and without us, you're not going to be able to play ball the way that you want to play ball. So
Yeah.
now we have essentially a puppet. We've
Yeah.
taken a guy who was an otaku, we've given him everything that he wanted for a short period of time. We've changed the leverage, we've taken back what we used to give him, and now everything we give him gets returned.
And that is
mhm,
the tragedy of young people in particular aspiring to influence as a job. And I understand why they turn to it because, the rest of the job market
It
fucking
looks good.
sucks as well.
Yeah.
I understand, but it's a question of degrees. And when you sign up to be an influencer when you're young and you have no other skills to fall back on and you're putting your eggs into this basket, you're doing this risk reward thing in your head. And I've also talked on threads about how nobody teaches you how to be an influencer and how to navigate these power dynamics.
Don't trust anyone that tries to teach you how to do it. I
Yes,
taught people how to do it, and guess what? It worked out great for every
yes, but
company
like
that I
you're
worked with,
still
and
an
terrible for them.
employee. Yeah,
Yeah.
like when you sign up to influence and you start, those are my dogs, you start shaping your life around this stream of income and become more and more
Mhm,
dependent on it and also become more and more emotionally dependent on the positive feedback and fame that you get from influencing.
mhm.
Um, you're gonna get fucked. I mean, that's you're just going to get fucked because you're going to age out of your demographic. As you
Yep.
said, the brands are going to stop working with you if you commit any kind of faux pas. Everything you do is tracked and surveilled, and also you're at the mercy of platforms who, with the flick of a switch or a new line of code,
Can turn you off.
can turn you completely off and shut you the fuck up. It is
Mm-hmm.
multi-level marketing schemes run on Facebook all
Mhm.
over again.
Yep.
And
So,
I think that we can look forward to even more fucked up shenanigans next year.
I love it. I love watching that.
I mean, this is great for us because we actually we kind of we can see the flow of power being driven. But I also have to kind of like resist the urge to turn this into a very cynical and pessimistic spin, because the fact that we have this transformation of power, it is a chicken and an egg game,
Yeah.
going from power producing up and down power from corporations to individualized power, the influencers, to back to the corporate. Okay, we see this now. We're going to take control over it again. However, there is this resistance now, between authenticity, trademark authenticity, and which is why I think trademarking authenticity right now is it is a faux pas. It is a paradox, because you can't be authentic if you're also being funded.
Paid? Well,
Yeah.
Yes,
we lost the plot
but-
on the definition of authentic.
Yes, but the shifting power dynamic also means that within every single period, there is this resistance back against this. People are saying, okay, these millennial influencers are being problematic right now, and we have to find a new method of reinterpreting what does it mean to be authentic anymore. For example, there is the reduction between for example, when minimalism was a huge fad, there is this counterculture against minimalism, which is maximalism. People wants to create this anti minimalism concept. What they're saying that these are they're too clinical, they're too much of like your room becomes a hospital rather than your room becoming a lived-in experience with stuff on the walls and stuff like that. So and that's where kind of that article, my Joker article comes in. It's that there is this constant back and forth between power dynamics, and that's why I think Foucault is so important in understanding that there is hope within this overarching like division and fear that a lot of people are going through, but also communities are also constantly popping up too. For example, there's a huge the Starbucks, for example, the different ways the different waves of coffee revolution, from coffee being a regular drink that you only get at a cafe, I mean at home before going to work, to Starbucks coffee. And now there is a resistance against Starbucks coffee by having these brewed beans, by having a lot of the more indie shops coming in. And now Starbucks is trying to adapt into that as well. And there is a constant back and forth between authenticity and neoliberalism. And I think that is kind of like the yin yang, that like it's what I call it's what me and my professor call Foucault judo. It's that it's constantly just a force that has to be constantly being redirected, rather than saying, okay, this is I am stuck here as a prisoner forever in this neoliberal hell. We kind of are, but every single day we see new systems of community and networking that comes up, that it's like, huh, okay, these things, these smaller groups are constantly coming together and forming their own thing until they get neoliberalized, until that neoliberalization gets community that gets broken down and turned into community again. It's a constant back and forth battle. I think that's been going for the last 50,000 years.
Well,
So I
wait,
have a
where do you think that Threads fits into that? Like as an app?
Mhm.
Because it's a really strange little app, right? There's no ads on it. There's no
Yes,
influencer.
yes.
There really isn't any developed influencer culture,
Mhm.
which is so ironic because Threads and Instagram are owned by the same company. And
Correct.
Instagram, I would argue, is the pit of influencer hell.
Yes,
It has
so
not
Mhm.
transitioned to Threads. Well, no, truly, I think Instagram is the absolute
well,
worst. It's worse
Instagram
than
is the one that figured it out the easiest and the most. I'm not going to interrupt, but I want you to get. But I have a good story that I can tell about the struggle between authenticity and corporatization. Once you were finished with your thought.
okay. So right now Threads is still at a very young level. It is still at a
It's
it is
really early.
yes. So right now Threads is that kind of like Threads and Blue Sky right now are within that first level of resistance because there are opportunities for people like us to actually chat before getting destroyed by ads, and that is both a
It's on its
positive.
way.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
both a positive and a negative thing. Positive
This
being
has
that
not felt like a podcast at all. This has genuinely felt like
a
a really
chat.
meandering conversation between three very strange people,
Yes.
which is lovely. But I guarantee you that if this is listened to by Threads, they're going to be like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck are
No,
these?
I think
And that's not a criticism of us,
Mhm.
but it is because we're having an authentic conversation and it's not a podcast. Do you know what I'm saying?
If,
Like,
if this gets
Yes.
listened to by anyone
I'm
at
eating
Meta,
rice.
either someone's
Rice?
gonna come
Yeah,
after me,
rice.
realizing who
Yes.
the I actually am, or I'm gonna be offered a job again. Like those are the if anyone from
Um,
Meta actually figures out and listens to this, they're gonna be like, oh my God, we worked with him when Instagram was first started. We know
Oh,
this
they're
guy.
going to
He
be like that
disappeared.
fucking bitch who
They're gonna be
broke her
like this
NDA.
one.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys just in this conversation, I'm gonna get sued to oblivion. I have
I
people that
know.
sort
I'm
of take
breaking my
care of that with me,
NDA,
but
Meta. I did a fucking interview with you back when I first went viral with being a trad wife. I spoke to you for 45 minutes and you paid me $125 instead of the $2,000 that you
yep.
promised me. And you sent me a cease and desist email, some bullshit. Anyway,
It's gonna be no, that's what it is.
the
Especially when I
surveillance
tell
is
this story.
insane.
The surveillance is nuts, and that's why I'm constantly when people I don't even own a computer anymore. I can't, but people are like, how'd you become a welder? Well, being a welder doesn't involve being anywhere near a computer.
It's actually making shit with your hands. It's as real
Yeah.
and authentic as one can possibly get in this fucking environment that we're in. You know, welders,
So
that's a
the
real job that connects physical environments
Mhm.
in the real world.
so
Literally,
the
literally.
authenticity conversation, I will put this story on the plate for you. And again, this
Guys, I
one I
have to
still have an
pee.
NDA on.
Tell your
That's fine. We
story.
can
I'll
all.
be right back.
Okay. While she's doing that, um, I worked for a Italian luggage company called Bricks for a while, and we held a press day at the Hotel Mondrian. This was like a big deal for the company that I was working with, and there was a lot of money that was getting funneled in and out. We had some of the first influencers come in, and the very first thing that one of the guys did was tell me, he goes, oh, I'm going to Key West. I'm staying at a small boutique hotel. I will guarantee you 5 images of Bricks luggage in Key West. I can guarantee that you'll get this and this and this out of a brand partnership with me. He went on to he pitched me for a solid 15 minutes. And it enraged me to the point because I was a bad person then and still am, but so I looked at him after he gave this 15-minute presentation to me. I looked at him and I just said, so you're a gay guy going to Key West and you want luggage.
I
And
came in punchline.
yeah, it shocks this he was tiny and I'm big.
Mhm.
Um, So it shocked this poor little influencer who's like he legitimately had he was one of the first Instagram influencers, right? So he had some clout, but in the moment where he was trying to pitch me, it was so inauthentic that it was such a turnoff at the time. But now
You're authentic.
He's probably doing amazing. That's the exact wording. He was doing everything right. I just smashed it out of him because I didn't want him to have any leverage on it. That
Mhm.
authenticity becomes a threat, essentially, right? So when he's telling me, oh, I'm going to this boutique hotel, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, this is my entire vacation, Brick's luggage will be a part of it. I mean, I don't want to hear his presentation. I want what I want.
Mhm.
So in one sentence, you crush people's authenticity. And that's the point. You crush it so that they don't think they're special anymore. So while you have someone that's very authentic, and then you later on, you just agree to what they wanted to do, really. I mean, the poor guy just wanted like two sets of luggage. And I had to be such a jerk about it because my
When you,
company
yeah.
only wanted specific looks and people and everything. So that
This
authenticity, I had to smash it out of him and say, no, 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 we're gonna play by brand guidelines first. And then once we have all this set out, then we'll figure out what an authentic post looks like
Mhm.
for my company,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
So
that goes back to Way's point about how brands are now able to imitate the kind of chaos, the authentic chaos
yeah,
of an influencer, you know, and there are some people on Threads who are doing that very well. Beyond Meat is very funny,
Mhm.
very
Wendy's.
no, I hate
adorable.
all of them.
Wendy's.
I hate all of them.
Yep. Wendy's.
I hate all of them.
But
Wendy's, if you
it's
see this,
fake
Mhm.
I know who you
authenticity.
are. I'm
Yeah.
just letting you know, okay, Wendy's?
Yep.
I know who you are. You can keep it secret from everyone else but me.
Oh,
Um.
Oh,
So back to
anyway.
the point of where the question was like, where are Threads at now? Well, Threads right now, it's still at its user creation aspect of their free app development trajectory. So when you're creating a new app, where the app idea is to sell authenticity and to sell community and to sell dialogue, you cannot gatekeep people from coming into this community by saying, hey, we're going to give you ads first. We have to sell you this idea of freedom and expression first so that you can come in and then create your own journey here so that when you come here, you're like, okay, I can't leave because now I'm actually connected to Emily. Now I'm actually connected to Bread. Now I'm actually connected to all these really awesome people that we're having continual dialogue and real dialogue with, not just influencer BS, right? We express our lived experiences. We laugh, we cry, we show off what we wear every single day occasionally.
Not every single
Me
day.
oh,
me
yes,
and
you do, Emily.
Look, only when
um
it's good, okay?
Listen,
mhm.
out of the three of us, only one of us is always camera ready, okay?
Yeah.
That's because it's literally a rule that I will never film myself crying on the internet.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
participating in this environment of surveillance. I am voluntarily barfing up so much personal information about myself every fucking day on this hellscape. But there are certain things that I will never share with the internet. And there are so many influencers who never actually make that list. They make plenty of lists of what they will talk about, but they will not put boundaries on what they will not share and keep for themselves. And
They
if there's
do. They do. But that comes with a price point. And it's way lower than
Oh,
you
yeah,
think.
I know.
It's so much lower than you think. So
I've made maybe 2 threads alluding to the fact that I have a spouse hiding in the background of my life or whatever. But like, that's a hard boundary for me for so
Mhm.
many, extremely valid reasons. But like, yeah, but what would be my price to dishing out marriage and relationship advice? Jesus fucking Christ. Like, you'll notice I never wade into that discourse because I understand the implications as a 41-year-old. But
They're
I would
very
not have
good
understood them 20
engagements.
years ago.
They are very good engagements for sure. It's easy money.
Oh my
and it
God.
really is.
Talking about relationships and shit. It's so fucking easy. It's disgusting.
Well, yeah,
But
it's because
but
literally everybody wants to be loved, right?
Mhm.
That's not even a niche topic.
Mhm.
Everybody wants esteem and love. And well, not everyone wants sex, but most of us want sex, right? And so that's why you
take
have
it or leave it.
That's one reason among many that you have so much fucking men are the worst and here's why. Women are the worst and here's why.
No, so this is fed. So this is something that I will feed into you guys and explain to you. I am so scared about the sentences I'm about to utter and how conspiracy oriented it sounds.
Ooh,
But I
get
hope
out your tinfoil hat. I love
I hope I've built enough rapport with people and showed people that I know what I'm talking
you
about and I know
absolutely
what I'm
haven't,
doing.
but it's
Okay.
okay. Say it anyway.
So a lot of the men versus women bullshit started off in 2010, all right, in a very small way, and backed by yeah, I'm not going to drop their name because they're still super powerful, but a small company that, well, small, 15 of the most powerful human beings I've ever been involved with in my life who control half your senators and congressmen because of what their kids do. And they do the cleanup crews for your senators' kids. See, those people started sowing and starting something called a culture war, knowing that eventually politically you're no longer going to be able to win because no one has the attention span for policy, right? So instead, you put these blanket terms in people and you create a male versus female instead of a male and female versus the government or versus this, like you guys call it, this hellscape that we're in. So they sow as much dissent as possible between specific niche groups saying we're different than them instead of us being able to find common grounds anymore, which is what we used to be able to do very effectively in public and with people. Instead of finding common ground anymore, they encourage. And when those posts are men always do this or women always do this, I mean, that started with like Jim Carrey way back in the, that started with the original stand-ups too. And they realized like, oh, we can weaponize this. So it's a
Yeah.
weaponization of culture is happening that you guys don't even realize because they just program that into the algorithm. And people sort of, what's that theory? I always forget the self organization theory or whatever, where human beings naturally form lines and everything on their own. It's
Yeah.
sort of that. So if you just put in with an SEO, men versus women, that kind of thing, and then bump it in the algorithm and other people start seeing like, oh, those posts do well. Well, they're going to mimic it and start doing it without any second thought about how bad this is for society.
There's so much mimicry happening. There's so
Yeah.
much, modern influencing. If I'm down bad and I have no money and I have no skills, and that's not every influencer, but let's say I'm young and I'm trying to pick a career.
That's most influencers,
And
even into
I
their
pick
40s.
influence, for Christ's sake. Um, you fall into a system of hierarchies and power structures, and you're not evolved enough to understand where all of it is coming from. And I'm drifting back toward Foucault and his idea of punishment and discipline working out and being a reflection of how all of those power structures are at work in our lives. That the way that we treat prisoners, like for example, Luigi Mangione, our
Love
most
him.
recent, main character.
Just gonna come out here and say it right now. Anyone that offs someone like that, whether it's fake or true or paid for because his father or the guy they killed was being indicted for insider trading and knew something, who cares? Put bullets in people.
Yes, I mean, look, I think we're all fairly pro Luigi, but the point that I wanted to make is that why are we talking about this guy? And it's because that situation is so reflective of our current moment, not only where we are politically and from a class perspective, but also just the internet itself. We know he's hot. We've got a lot of pictures of him. It used to be that when people committed heinous crimes, you would release one or maybe two photos of them, but now we've got this guy's Spotify playlist to crawl through. We've got his old tweets. We've got his social media, right? And we can kind of put together a much more complete idea of who he was as a person, and our punishment of him, for his crime is going to take on a certain tint, right? Foucault, when he was talking about how we used to treat prisoners who committed heinous crimes. It was very
Mhm.
violent.
Yes.
It was tarring and feathering, it was drawing and quartering, it was beheading in the public square. And that was reflective of a time when we were much more physically violent as a people.
Well,
But
not
now
only
we have the
physically
internet,
violent.
now we have social
Mhm.
media, and we
Mhm.
we can engage with power structures from a deeply like mental, psychological perspective because we can crawl through people's internet histories and understand who they were as people.
Yes, so a few points. So Luigi, um, so Luigi isn't only a white dude, he's also a white dude within the middle class and upper middle
I
class.
just hold on. I got to make the joke. We've come a long way as society for recognizing Italians as being white.
Yeah, we really have.
Yeah, no, yes, yes,
I mean,
Italian,
look, as the only
Italians
Italian,
used to
I
be the
think, on
peasant
this
class for
call, I would
sure.
argue that we're
Irish
white.
people too. So Luigi as a as a upper middle class representation of America, of middle America and aspirational America, like holy shit, this person can get in trouble. He's not black, he's not brown, he's not dark skinned, he's not Southeast Asian. Like what the fuck?
Yeah,
Luigi with his family can get fucked by these corporations. Holy shit, what can it do for me as a white man? As me, Way, the white motherfucker who sits in this, middle class ass town. Like,
yep.
holy it's actually hurting people like me, not people like them. So that's one thing. That Luigi is now a signifier of culture, a symbol, an actual symbol of culture, because Luigi has so many lived experiences and ideas and histories through his Spotify playlist list, through his Twitter stream, through his um, Goodreads list. That shows that okay, the world is not black and white, and that characters are complicated. And this is something that a lot of minorities have tried to get white people to recognize, is that we are people and we are not just these creatures. We are not just these walking bundles of flesh that has no history and that has no empathy and psychology and friends and family and all that shit. So Luigi was that signifier for the upper middle class, saying that holy shit, if this motherfucker came in trouble, we, the middle class Americans, can also get in trouble too. We white folks can also get in trouble too. And of course, I'm saying this with a fuck ton of disclaimers because some people might read me as like, this motherfucker's not white. What the fuck? Metaphors, people. And
That's the same stuff we say about Puerto Rican people too, though, right? We say Puerto Ricans aren't white when half of them are white.
Yeah, no,
I'm just saying racist stuff at this point. It's funny to me, but it's also there's a modicum of truth to all of that. Is part of the reason why Trump won with the Latino culture itself is because some of them didn't see themselves the same way as other Latino people saw it. Some of
yeah,
them, you know, they
a
just
lot of Italian Americans were under incredible pressure to assimilate. And just
Mhm.
for context, everyone, I'm the most basic American mix ever. I'm half Southern poor Italian and half Irish, which are historically disadvantaged amongst the white folks. There was incredible pressure for us to assimilate. There's the Catholicism, but Italians were under a little, Italians have dark skin. Southern Italians often have dark skin. And so that's where the question of whether we're white or not is coming. But it was so fascinating to see the activation around the concept of, is this man white? How white is he? Because people were grasping for an explanation as to, we've all become habituated to the roots of so many grievances are in minorities not having as much power as white folks, right? For the last 10 years, that's been the prevailing conversation, the George Floyd of it all. And it's, of course, it's incredibly valid. But then, as Wei says, suddenly you have this white-ish guy committing terrible crimes and being, surrounded by AK-47s. And now we have to decide just how white he is. And it is certainly a harbinger of what is to come, because the dominating the fascist ideal is a narrowing of a progressive narrowing of the boundaries of acceptability.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm, that's
That
a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
yes, that you have to, in order to maintain ultimate control over as much of a population as possible, you have to constantly narrow the boundaries of
Mhm.
acceptable behavior and of acceptability to the point where nobody fits the
Mhm.
criteria, and thus the state can assume ultimate power.
Mhm.
So
Yes. So this question of whiteness and ultimately this carving of whiteness slowly carves in. First, they come from, first they came from the Black Americans, and then they came from the Southeast Asians, then they came from the Mexicans, Latinos, and then they came from the Jews, then they came from the Italians, then they came from the Catholics, and then within the
You got
Catholics
your
they came from
timeline messed up, but
one of those.
okay.
So I mean, within the U.S., there's always going to be this carving and centralization of power that keeps occurring within this huge white narrative, right? There is this like because as Emily says, the more concentrated power becomes, the more that you have to take away from the other,
exactly.
and life is and this competitive neoliberalism, and that's why patriarchy, neoliberalism, and racism, sexism, they're also interconnected and they're also intersectional. They're all on this idea of, okay, who is on top and who is on bottom, and how much can we carve out and define. And this is where Foucault's idea of scientificalization, academicalization, where when you're talking about madness and civilization, excuse me, so madness used to be a form of religious religious divine, let's say, for example, the ancient Greeks, they had their seers, right? They had their seers in the Middle Ages. There are a lot of jesters, there are a lot of mad people who are kind of saying that this is a divinity from the divine. Madness turned from a form of sacred religious ritual and been defined and institutionalized into this concept of saying, okay, you are neurodivergent, you are mentally disabled, you are mentally handicapped, you are unable to move your body in a certain way. Therefore, within this institution, we're going to define these XYZs. And that you can no longer produce the level of influential power that you used to have, which is this the divine calling from God, or this like these religious experiences. They were madness experiences produced, collectivized through like rituals, through taking acid, for example, or other hallucinogenic drugs in history. But now madness is no longer a this spiritual awakening. Rather, madness is this thing that we use to put these people into different institutions, whether it's a madhouse or whether it's the special ed section of the school, of the public school, so that when you categorize the people in special ed, you're like, oh, these people, they're not really people, they're just different than us. This scientificalization process is what one of the things that Foucault really talks about, is who defines power and who defines the vocabulary of power and vocabulary of expressing those sets of people, so that we can then still regulate them, we can then still surveil them, we can then still kind of cut them up into smaller pieces so that they're much easier to control. This idea of the big other, these other people, and us, and we as a group, it becomes a strategy of constant constant diversification, so that this ETF for the corporate world has a better has their power is everywhere in the constant defining of our societal structures and societal live lives. Like
Not
ETFs
the
are
ETF
no,
metaphor.
seriously, ETF
Yeah, it's a good
metaphor
metaphor,
is
but
a really good metaphor for power structure because
It is actually.
S&P 500. What happens when what happens when
Oh
you
my
invest in
God. Anyone listening to this is like, what the fuck?
they've zoned out. They've zoned out.
Mhm. The
Sorry.
S&P 500 is really good for institutional power because they realize that holy shit, when you diversify your portfolio into different sectors, if A falls, B to Z still is there. If B falls, A, C to Z is still there.
That's
And
why I invest in exchange traded funds and not
Mhm.
crypto, way.
Mhm.
Yes, and
Keep-
I dollar
that's
cost average into ETFs, so low expense
Mhm.
ratios.
And that's a really good parable for how you see institutional power. Their power
That's
isn't
blown my
const
mind.
their power isn't concentrated in only the prison system. Their power isn't only concentrated in the prison production of economic power, because the prison ETFs, they don't make that much money until we have political forces in which we can drive more leverage
Oh
from the
my God, but
prison.
wait, that implies that, okay, so you've diversified via the ETF. Brad, I'm sorry, we're getting nerdy. The exchange traded fund.
Oh, I follow
Diversify.
along. I don't think you guys understand. My portfolio is small, but it's doing better than both of
But like,
yours.
okay, so you've diversified so as to alleviate the downside risk of any one industry falling, but now you have to move culture in its entirety forward in the direction that you want to make money.
Mhm.
Can
Oh, that's
I just
horrifying. Oh,
can I
Yep.
that's
really
horrifying.
And that's where the idea of power is everywhere comes in again. It's that power is everywhere.
Yes.
However, you can still disrupt a lot of the other sections. Whenever you create a new ETF, there's always going to be other smaller ETFs
Oh my
coming up
God. Yeah,
that's
you can
constantly
experiment.
fighting.
You can
You're
experiment within smaller
experiment.
subsections of the economy, and
Mhm.
if you fuck up one of them, you still have the others to, oh
So
fuck.
the force isn't only for Stanford and Global, Stanford and Poor. Is also ability to for us to as small people, because we also realize, oh, we can collectivize, we can unionize, we can have bargaining powers, because without people there's no power.
Exactly. Well, that comes back to the fact that the only way to fight back against this is strength in numbers, right? To push back
Mhm.
against the fragmentation that algorithms have created. The internet now is just essentially for companies. Brad was talking about that
Correct.
earlier. It used to be
It's no longer the
a
Wild
Wild
West.
West.
Yep.
So I have two examples that I can
Now
show
it's
you
fucking
and
for
and
people.
be an
Yeah.
interjection into this. Number one, with what you're talking about, there's a case study you can do right now on Linkin Park. Linkin Park, their new lead singer is terrible. Everyone has said she's terrible. Everything is bad. After two
She
weeks of having some of the worst reviews ever, all of a sudden you see an influx of people saying, well, this is a new Linkin Park. It's not Chester
Mhm.
Bennington. It's not this. And you wonder where those accounts are coming from. And then you do a little exploration and you see that they are bought and paid for by the music industry, because it's easier to have Linkin Park, which is already an established company on its own. Remember, there isn't a Linkin Park LLC. They have their own costs. They have their own, there's a credit card that just says Linkin Park LLC somewhere. And all of that funds to change the opinion that's going on, because you have so much of this rapid normalization of opinions, right? And the other thing is, the conversation that you guys just had is the single most American fucking conversation I've heard in my entire life. Because now I live in Quebec, right? And we have it driven, aside from the identity and the racialness and everything. I feel like Quebec itself lives in more of a post-racial society, because immigration is half of the population here, if not more. And I live within the immigrant population, right? So is there a difference between me and the dudes that I work with and that I hang out with from the Congo? Yeah, there's differences, but we don't fault each other for it, because all of us together see ourselves as the have-nots versus the haves. So instead of dividing your have-nots into other little niches and experimenting on them and everything, all of the have-nots here in Quebec have a tendency to look past race, have a tendency to look past the socioeconomics, have a tendency to look past even your state of addiction or your criminal record. And we
Because
just
the
see it
class overrides any other identity that
overrides
you may
all
have.
of the other identities.
Because in a
And while
capitalist,
Americans,
yeah,
you
because
guys
in a
have so much.
capitalist situation, your class, your purchasing power overrides a hell of a lot of other bullshit.
And you guys put that into more and more niches because you have such a large population that you can sustain those niche communities. Well, rather here, the population is so small and we're in the bottom third of our land mass. We don't have the obligation or the desire to break ourselves down more between race, between age,
Well,
between all of that. There's just the have and have nots. There's the Quebecers who have a lot of money and the English that have a lot of money that live on the West Island. And then there's the rest of us. And the rest of us all intermingle together because there's so many of us. We deal with religions together. We deal with a lot more than the Americans do. You guys look for reasons to separate and divide while we here in Quebec look for reasons not to get treated like crap by the French.
well, we don't really have to use Quebec as an example of
I'm just using that because I'm a potato head, man.
that's fair. Um, I mean, when we look at all the other countries that doesn't have a that has a very different racial history than the U.S., for example, China and Japan and Korea, their notions of segregation are going to be very different than the U.S. notions of segregation. However, there is still this segregation going on between the different color sects. Um, if you're darker skin, you're still going to be treated different than if you're lighter skin. There's this reason in which why white white skin cream is so popular in Japan and Korea as well as even China right now. It's that there is this rooted notion that if you're darker skin, you're working in the farmlands, um, you're working out in the sun, you're doing blue collar work. So there's always
Filipino
going to be
too. Yeah.
yeah, there's always going to be Filipinos exactly. And the reason I keep saying the reason
Filipinos
I
are
kept
the.
we don't use that,
Sorry,
but
I'm
yes,
not gonna say never me.
but
Fred,
the
sit
reason
down. You keep moving.
I have to. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm like so TDH that I can't. I've never been able to sit down for a podcast or anything in life. This
Okay.
is why I'm a welder now,
Go ahead, Wayne.
and I'm
the
not even
reason
on
that
amphetamines anymore.
the reason that I was distinctively saying South Asia before is that I'm consciously making this distinction that segregates that not segregates but that defines that there is a huge class difference between Eastern Asians and Southeast Asians because of the colonial roots
Colonization.
Yeah.
that occurs in Japan and China, and the Western influence in post Vietnam, Southeast Asia countries. There are so many ways to divide and conquer still, even in these homogenized countries.
Yeah.
That even within a quote unquote post-racial Quebec, there will still be so many other rural groups that are indigenous, for example. Right now, indigenous, this talk of indigenous and all these graves in Canada are sparking a revolt. It's like, wait a minute, we are these civilized people. Why the fuck are there kids' graves in the backyard of these schools that we just discovered? So even within that notion of post-racial or this idea of that society has been homogenized culturally, there are still lots of um, outer outliers that still have not been institutionalized, that still has not been. Um,
I can challenge that too very easily with own personal experience. So look at me right now. Everyone on the podcast, look at me. Look at this face.
mhm,
Yep. Okay. All right.
mhm,
I'm technically indigenous. This is why it's post-racial now, is because I'm not talking about First Nations. I'm talking about that I am Gypsy. I am First Nations in Ireland. I'm what's called Pavi, and technically I am Indian. I am Irish, and Northern India is where my culture came from. And now, when I go onto the reserve, I live right near a reserve that's very, very divided, rightfully so. I walk around without any problems because they know me, because I can speak to my history and my past and where I come from
mhm.
and the fact that I am indigenous of another culture. Um, they don't really care about my skin color. I'm a little hued red underneath all of the pale, but it's no longer about what you come off as and look at, and it's more about what you can speak to. What do you know?
But you still
Because we
but it still requires for you to speak.
Well, yeah, I think within that community, there's still a little bit paranoid, and that's the last one of the last communities that hasn't necessarily assimilated because rightfully so. It's been real bad for them. But but for me to walk around as a person and be accepted within most very different looking groups after a 5 minute conversation of what do I know, talking about like let's say spirituality of
Mhm.
my people or letting them know, hey, I know this or that about yours, and it's very similar with mine. It's an immediate alleviation, I think is the right word. I'm
Yes.
trying to up my vocabulary for you guys.
Yes, but it still
There's
requires you to
this
speak though. That it still requires an exchange of content and information and community. What I'm talking about is that when you are coming in from a corporate standpoint or a institutional power standpoint, there
Mhm.
isn't opportunities for people to speak. For example,
Okay.
at the DNC, there was not a single Palestinian person speaking. And that's the reason for not having that one single Palestinian speaking at the DNC. They don't want that much leverage. When they speak, that's when the power actually comes from, is that exchange of dialogues, exchange of empathy and community.
Okay, I see where you're saying now.
Americans, or Canadians, people, this is why books are being banned, is because we share stories and we share expressions of our humanity with each other. Words become the most powerful thing that the people wants to stop us from kind of creating. So in the beginning, so right now we are in that we are still in that fetal development phase of threats where they require people to come in and start creating communities and creating words and dialogues, which emphasizes your point, Brett, about how these people saw me, even though my skin is a white motherfucker, they still saw me, they listened to me. After 10 minutes, they're like, we're family, and that's the danger of talking. And
Ah, okay.
that's the danger of keeping threads and ad-free environment, because right now institutions are not really speaking out right now. They're still within the affluencer framework of like Wendy's hip, trendy
Yeah.
style of marketing. However, once we have situated ourselves within this community, that's when the value proposition of threads actually becomes valuable, because
Mm.
when we can no longer leave it, that's when they can add the ads slowly into a community or into our digital community. And that's why they want to incentivize, hey, we have threat influencer payout programs, we have these new payout programs. They are kind of like sparkling in, okay.
Yeah.
They're sparkling in, they're kind of peacocking for the people who can easily divest from their original thing, just invest into threads. And then later,
Mhm.
when there are ads, later when there are much more hidden agendas that are SEO, capitalized, that are algorithm driven because of analytics, um, when they can afford much more influencers, because um, Meta has that marketing power, and
Mhm.
Meta isn't buying things. Meta is the consultant, in which they exchange between actual corporations and the institutional smaller populace, in which they can then be the person that exchanges the rate. Meta isn't dangerous because Meta sells your information. Meta is dangerous because they are the McKinsey, they are the BlackRock, they are the exchange,
Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah, Cambridge
Yes,
Analytica.
the
Yeah.
Cambridge Analytica. They are
Lest
the
we all forget.
Yeah.
yes, they are the person who is in control of the exchange rates, and that's what makes it really, really dangerous. The danger isn't coming from the fact that Meta is controlling us. No, Meta just gives people, hey, when I'm buying an ad for my article, for example, not that I do, but I do buy ads for my friends and family's restaurants. So when I do their marketing stuff, I have to target certain groups. I have to target certain locations. I have to target, okay, are these people, if I'm selling from that targeting, I realize, oh shit, if I want to sell my articles, oh shit, if I want to sell my brain and ideas, I can target those people who are, reading literature, saying, oh my God, Wei is such a brilliant motherfucker, and that he is an authentic person producing these articles. Now that I have a platform in which I can be like, okay, I'm going to select group, I'm going to look at my analytics, see what the age group breakdowns are, see what the gender breakdowns are, and then I'm going to write a ad going towards these people. And Threads provides, Meta provides you with those ads. They give you the platform in which you can do the targeting, you can do the drone attacks for these certain groups. Meta isn't bad because Meta sells your items. Meta is bad because it provides the highway for exchange of ideas. The exchange it provides the let's say let's see, the catalog of symbols that you can sell to. Ooh, that was effort. Holy shit.
So I'm gonna bring up one thing that I would like everyone's opinion on too, and why I'm still on Threads is I don't think Threads is in its infancy. You have the airplane app or whatever it is that we all just downloaded that they're tracking more stuff, saying that we're in the Threads beta. But there was a very important thing that happened when Threads first started that everyone forgets about that is
Twitter.
stuck in my mind,
Oh.
which is when they tried to make influencers for us. Do you remember the pickleball fiasco?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, they
And
took
I want
all of
to,
the major
so guys,
Instagram
since we,
influencers and
yeah,
they
I
tried to
I
make
wanna
them
spend the
Threads
next like
influencers.
15-20 minutes of this conversation focused on the Threads app because we've been
Okay.
yapping for a long time and it's been great.
Yeah.
But if anybody's still listening to this, they're from Threads. So explain the pickleball thing. And then I want us to go around in a circle and make a prediction for what Threads is going to be like a year from
Okay.
now.
So the pickleball thing was this. Threads opened up. I think that it took off way faster than Meta knew what to do with.
Yeah.
I think you immediately Threads in a text-based social media app attracted more intelligent people than it would on Facebook and everything. And their usual influencers of like girls or men or guy code or like that bitch problems, all of those fell to the wayside for the most part because Threads attracted an extremely intelligent user base, right? So what they tried to do then is take Haley Steinfeld. They tried to take that one weird-nosed guy who does all of the terrible parody songs and everything, and they took all of them and did a pickleball tournament, and they live streamed it. And they said, these are what they tried to do is create a pantheon for Threads, right? They tried to say, well, these are the people on Instagram, and these are the people that you're gonna be looking to on threads.net and Instagram app or whatever. Okay. The backlash was hilarious. And I was one of the people trolling them too. But if you went to it, this would be something that on Facebook or on Instagram would be big news. All of these influencers in the same look, Mr. Beast just did it with the Costco guys and everything. He put all of these influencers in his house and created one video, and he's getting billions upon billions of views for that one thing. They tried to do the same. They tried to make it with pickleball, and everyone went, this is stupid. You're stupid. Like, pickleball is stupid. These influencers don't fit into a text-based intelligent app. These are people that are pretty. And that's it. And that's 70% of what's driving them as influencers is the fact that they're pretty because it's Instagram. So it became a huge, huge problem, I think, for the oligarchy controlling Threads of going, well, this is completely different. We've built something different. We don't know what we're doing. And that's what I feel like has stopped the ads from rolling in. That one little moment in time
Yet.
where they said, "Oh crap, we don't know what we're doing. We have a different user base than we've ever seen before. We can't put ads, we can't put this stuff in because if we do it the way that we've done it a million times before and
Everyone
then
will
just
leave
waited for our
immediately.
app to die and go to the next app of Blue Sky or whatever, that's not going to function with these people." So for
Mhm.
the first time, it was people saying, "We don't want your pickleball. We don't want your Steinfelds. We don't want these people that we've been looking at enough and being fed to us on your For You page on Instagram while we are deactivating on Instagram. We are sick of that. We're a different group of people." And I think that is why Threads is way farther along than we think, but it's still in its infamous or infancy in a lot of ways because they're scared of the user base and how quickly we turn against. Look at Mosari,
So,
whatever his
yep.
post, the amount of trolling that happens. It's not the same as it was in MySpace with Tom, and we all
There's
loved
an
him. It's not the same
intolerance
in
of
Zuck. Yeah,
power. Yeah,
yeah.
there's
There's
an
a
Yes.
intolerance of power, of a hierarchy on
yeah.
Threads.
And that's
I'll get to that, but I'm gonna let Wei talk
Okay.
before
and
I do.
and that's where like this micro resistance comes in. It's that okay, Threads is the giant Meta is this giant top down organization with a with a $2 trillion buying power. However, even with $2 trillion, they still cannot buy authenticity within that first wave of Thread users and accounts where that kind of that's antithetical to their Instagram marketing style. That's antithetical to their Facebook marketing style. Right now, we are seeing that resistance, which allows us to have this conversation, to not being bombarded by the level of ads, and also, we just came from the Elon Muskification of Twitter, right? That Thread saw that. Okay, so I think Thread saw that as a let's play the good guy in this game of microblogging, because we have all this, we have the platform technology to provide so many people with the ability to talk, and let's just not quite become the bad guy yet, even though Mosseri is a complete asshole. In a lot of his reductive responses.
Yeah.
He's not banning everyone who makes a fake profile of him. He's only banning certain people who's making a fake profile of him,
The really good ones.
the really really good ones, but he's still allowing a lot of people to be like, okay, we can let these peasants do the little community charade for at least another year, or for at least a few more months or so, because they're seeing um they're kind of marketing off of this like collective tension that we have towards these broader power structures right now, which is that it's already becoming obvious for a lot of Gen Zers, and even Gen Alphas, and a lot of millennials, and a lot of Gen Xers, that okay, there are problems going on right now, and even I think even Meta is like, let's let these peasants have a little fun first before we come in and turn all of them into a collective force of neoliberalization. And when that occurs, a new system is going to come out of it. And then that new system is going to go through the cycle all over again. But the people are still there. Whether it's new people or being replaced by other people, the people that resist are still there. And I think that's still within the core of our humanity in the last 50,000 years, is that we're still here, and that we still have this ability to talk with each other, even though there are so much shit going on in the world, even though so many groups are still being targeted and being silenced. There are still groups in which we're still talking about. We still have the ability and the vocabulary to have this dialogue and discussion, which I think is really, really powerful. It's a really powerful insight, because um, among all the shitty things that's going on right now, in market forces, we are still having this conversation using the platform called Zoom, which in and of itself is a corporate monopoly post-COVID.
Mhm. Yeah, this is definitely not a corporate conversation though, which
Well,
there's a lot of reasons to hope.
I'll let you know how corporate this conversation is by how my email is affected in the next 2 weeks.
Sure.
Exactly.
In terms of threads, because I have to wrap it up soon, since it's been delightful talking to you guys, but I wanted to close the conversation by asking you, what is your prediction for threads in 2025? And I'll start by telling you what my prediction for the future will be in terms of the app. Because we've had a lot of conversations about influencing and equality and how conversations are driven by concentrated power at the top. I think that we will find in 2025, my prediction is that we'll have our first Threads celebrity. And I think it will be somebody who really needs money. So who really needs to be successful. Yeah. And we'll turn to influencing as a result, and we'll find great success on Threads because they do not curse. They're attractive, but not so attractive that they're alienating. They are probably single because that increases parasocial relationships. They will either be white or they will be a model minority. However, they will also have some kind of special sauce about them, and I don't know what that is, but they will have some sort of distinct feature, perhaps, or something distinct about their background, that will elevate them to the position of this is a marketable Threads celebrity. And initially, the community will be very excited by this because there has been no distinct hierarchy on Threads as of yet. We do not have Threads fluencers. No matter how many times people tell me I might be a Threads fluencer, I am not, I can assure you.
Yes.
You are.
No,
Yes.
I'm not.
Yes.
There's no
You'll get
clout that comes from it, but I do think that there will genuinely be somebody who emerges and they will have a lot of money thrown at them. However, they will ultimately be a sacrificial lamb. They're going to be this person who shoots to fame on Threads, that creates a lot of dialogue around different aspects of their privileges and their personalities and their class, however, and ultimately, do you know what I'm saying by sacrificial
Yeah.
lamb?
No,
of
I
course.
know.
It's going to
It's-
destroy them. Like, they're
It's
going to be
going to-
absolutely fucking destroyed because Threads is so intolerant of celebrity and
Very-
hierarchy, and because it is a leftist app that strives for equality in all things. It is why Dove
Oh shit.
hates us so much, is because that man was fully convinced that there was a secret cabal of powerful threaders in a group chat who were coordinating stories on the app. And
I mean, we're doing this shit right now, so
That
fuck.
man hates us because his father left in 6th grade and he was never cool. That's why.
well,
he
and that
hates
goes
us.
back to the fact that we have so much information about that man because he's voluntarily given so much information
I
away.
have
We
so
can
much more
surveil him
information
and
that I
decide that he's
could-
a bad person, but like,
I
Emily,
could
have you
give it
done a
all
background
what
away.
check
pissed
on
him
Dove?
off was that
God
he
damn.
thought that we had power over him.
No, what pissed him off is that he has the mentality of an 8th grade woman who he thinks he is not part of the popular group and that we're not interacting with him the way that he wants to be interacted with. So everyone else is at fault except for that guy. Sorry, I hate him. I'll go on forever. I'm going to do my best, but I know everything about that man. And he texted someone like, I'm so afraid that Brad would dox me, or I could. I'll just say it right now. I know everything about that man. I
Don't
know
dox
where
it.
he
But
worked. I'm not going
is,
to. I know all of it, and I keep
This
it to
podcast is
myself.
never getting funded, by the
My
way.
prediction.
Yeah.
My prediction.
my
that
point
people
though,
are
to
gonna
wrap
realize
up
he sucks.
my Threads prediction is that
I hate him.
Threads has been shown to be so intolerant of hierarchy, celebrity, and fame that the first Threads celebrity boosted by Meta, because this is inevitable, they're going to keep trying it over and over and over,
Yeah.
but that poor person is going to get fucked
Yeah.
every
I
which
think-
way.
The
To confirm
life
your
cycle
point-
of celebrity will be so small, and the only way they could redeem that character is by having one very large, glaring problem with them. Let's say they come out and say, well, I'm a Threads influencer, but I'm an alcoholic. That's how
Yeah.
they survive. I'm a thread
Yeah.
as an influencer, but actually I'm freebasing in the back. I'm freebasing behind a dumpster when I'm not on threads. That's their redeeming character
You
and
can
how they stick
monetize
around.
sobriety. You can monetize any number of fucking
Well,
things.
it's a
Anyway,
story.
Wei, I would
It's
like
a
to hear your
story.
prediction
Okay,
of
so
what's going to happen on Threads in 2025.
how many minutes do you have, Emily and Brad?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so
I'm good to hear.
my friend is actually going to join this chat, and he is a black digital intellectual. He's one of the people who kind of likes who theorizes about Black Twitter. And
Ooh,
yes, he is like he's huge.
spectacular.
He's on the same level of as feminist Jones, for example. And I told him that you do not have to have your camera on for this chat. But my prediction, to your point, Emily, is that that sacrificial lamb, I think, is going to exist. However, I think what's really fascinating right now is that there are no natural influencers on Threads right now that has more than 100,000 followers. All
Mhm.
the max follower I've seen right now is cheerful analyst, and she has about 80,000.
And they
And a
were
lot, and,
mostly ported over from Instagram, right? Because I mean, my
right,
17K is
right. There are
100%
no
organic. I will brag about that. I was a nobody before
Mhm,
Threads. So
exactly.
every 17,000 is only from Threads.
You need to think you were somebody
And
before threads,
I
though.
had my no, yeah, like my not Foucault account was all it wasn't really organic because I pay for the for the verify sign, but it's also problematic because to be verified you have to have your uh excuse me, oh my god, to be verified you have to have your full name on the thing, and it's like, okay, you don't want to have your full name on your Threads account because that way it's annoying.
Yeah.
um but yeah, there are no threaders out there right now that's like, holy shit, this person is an organically formed, really popular person that's authentic enough to capture the voice of pretty much all groups. And what's really fascinating right now is that Threads feels like a huge bubble. Everyone just seems to know each other because of the algorithm, because of that kind of like mycelium connection.
Yeah.
And
Mm,
the way that I
Mushroom
see,
spread.
yes, the way I use my mycelium is because that's how networks are kind of like generated. They're not, they're not no connections between one and between like
Those bubbles.
yes. Oh shit, let's go. One second. Emit. Um, yo, Andre Brock is in the motherfucking house. Let's go. Okay.
Woo! Hello.
So
Hey, y'all.
so so Andre, I'm talking about how Threads has currently no accounts that has more than 100,000 followers that are organically generated. A lot of the followers on
Organically generated.
organically generated means that they are not they're not from Instagram. So when you're coming into Threads, the followers, that the people that has more than 100,000 followers, they typically brought in from Instagram. I haven't seen anyone that has more than 100,000 followers on Threads that isn't coming from an Instagram background, or
They
that
don't
isn't
exist, I
they
promise.
they
do
don't
not
exist.
Yeah.
exist.
I've
They
been on
They
don't
the app
don't.
since
exist.
day 2. Perhaps
Yeah.
maybe that you top out at 25K organic Threads only following. Maybe I'm delusional at 17K, but like the fact that Threads is also an Instagram app creates a lot of obscurity around who actually has those followers.
Fair.
That's what Masari said. The Threads is a post follower count social media app, is because it's
Post follower, I like
impossible
that.
to actually track where and who and what everything's coming from versus what's actually paid for too.
Everyone
He's right.
assumes that I am somebody important. I've done
You are,
I've done a
Emily.
few no, I've done a few
You're
podcasts. No,
important to a
seriously,
lot of people.
17 is
I'm
actually
just
a
some
I'm
pretty
fucking
gonna
white
pretty
push
big
lady.
you.
account.
I'm just some fucking white lady with a big mouth. But like truly,
But
I've
those are
gone
so
on a few
successful in
podcasts and
life.
they're like, where can we find you? And I'm like, on Threads?
Yeah, it's
Literally
wild.
it.
So I'm struggling with this definition of organic only because we're at a stage where social media is really mature. Like I've been on Twitter for 15 years, and so both Threads and Blue Sky have seen an influx of people who technically are new to the platform, but are not necessarily new to social media. So immediately when you said someone who has an organic following of doesn't have who has an organic following over 100,000, the first person I thought of was Jamel Bowie, and I write about him in my book. He's a columnist for the New York Times. He was one of the first Black Twitter defectors. And when he got to Twitter, because of his reputation on New York Times and Twitter, his following count is up. Like I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure it's
Okay.
got to be over 100, right? And he's not the best example, at least for me, because he is an elite, a celebrity, right?
Mhm.
But I think in terms of trying to understand what organic means, you have to account for the fact that people may be coming into Threads with a particular type of notoriety or a claim that will immediately lead
Exactly.
to
And
their
also
following.
to continue insulting myself, my 17K grown entirely from Threads, half of those people are just there because they're hoping I'm going to show my tits one day.
Well,
Like,
I
let's be
mean,
real.
there's a
I'm a
reason why I write
conventionally
about libidinal
attractive
economy.
white woman who, occasionally post pictures. I'm not insensible to the fact that my following count grows by 2,000 every
Mhm.
time I post a particularly good outfit.
Yeah.
So is that organic or not?
Yes,
They're
it
not
Hey,
there.
is.
there you
Libid-
go. That's an example for you.
Yeah,
Show your
yes.
tits, you'll get more followers.
So
Yeah.
that's what Andre was the way that Andre was talking about libidinal economy, and that's what the thing I wrote in my article too is the
Yes.
idea of libidinal economy, an economy of desire, where desire and passion and desire sells your content, where the way that you make people feel, the way that you make people sad or smile or anguish
Horny.
or horny, all those things
Or
are going to be
angry.
or angry,
Jealous.
engagement
Angry.
based, jealousy. They're
Jealousy
negative.
and anger are the two things
Jealousy
that
and
drive
anger.
social media.
It's the thing that
Yeah.
drives the engagement algorithms. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. And that's something that a lot of us are really against, is this idea of engagement bait, but it's also not a binary idea. It's a gradient, right? Whenever I produce
Yes.
whenever I produce a historical narrative, my reason for a lot of those productions is that, okay, I want these motherfuckers to feel something. I write in a way that I try to command this level of like, okay, I'm gonna make this person empathize first, and then make them feel sad, and then I'm going to make them feel emotional or aspirational, inspirational about
Oh,
something.
what an abusive relationship you're
Right.
creating.
Exact.
That
Yes,
is an
and
abusive-
And that is power
grooming
reflected in every aspect of life, the way that we treat the powerless among us, prisoners, the
Mhm.
poor.
Mhm.
It seeps into our privileged relationships, our privileged structures. They inform the discourse in literally every aspect of life. The fact
Yes.
that we're crawling through Luigi Mangioni's psychological past informs the discourse on dating, where it's no
Mhm.
longer about beating your wife to control her. It's about
Mhm.
analyzing her Instagram
Mhm.
to figure out who she is deeply as a person, and then engaging in psychological warfare.
And then,
and this goes
so beating her after you stalk her socially.
Well, I
so
mean, that is not to say that violence no longer exists, but I mean,
Still
anybody
exists
who's
is
read
what
a
I'm trying
book
to point out.
200 years old knows that America is generally living in a less physically violent, speaking very broadly. We don't tar and feather people in the streets anymore.
Oh,
We just
so
don't,
this is
but we engage in the deepest and nastiest psychological warfare because we have a surveillance state where we can
Mhm.
learn so much about who a person is by crawling through their Spotify.
So
I-
how does this tie to Foucault's power structure of top-down power versus a capillary power, which is power being diverse and everywhere? We are no longer beating the other person, the minority, the female, the woman, right? We're no longer doing that with our physical hands, and we're no longer doing that with our guns and absolute direct power. However, we now have this much more psychologically draining surveillance system through the way in which we talk about them, through the way in which we see their Instagrams every single day. Therefore, it's no longer a direct access, but it is a indirect, a much more devious access, because we don't see all the potential surveillance systems in which that person is being surveilled. For example, through analytics, for example, analytics allows everyone to have this power of surveillance of their audiences. The fact that now normal people have the power of surveillance through analytics is a huge institutional power shift, because in the past, who has surveillance data? Maybe the people, except you, Brad. But in the
I
past,
did.
before Google SEOs, who has so much surveillance data points about people that they can produce outcomes and results and feelings, and they can invoke emotions with those people. Now even Snapchat has this global, not global, but even Snapchat now has such a public demonstration of surveillance. For example, when you are on one swipe of the Snapchat app, you can see where all of your followers and connected persons are physically on a cart or on a
the
map.
map. Yeah,
The map.
I've never used Snapchat because I'm old, but it sounds
So weird.
horrifying.
Can okay, I'm gonna interject something that's absolutely disgusting that I did. I did this willingly. This is my fault. I've taken responsibility for it. But this lets you know the level of surveillance that can happen to anyone.
Mhm.
Before influencers started popping off, we would target editors. There was one specific editor. She worked for Cosmopolitan Girl, right? We, just with her name and finding out her address, were able to turn to DoorDash. Now, DoorDash, you can't buy people's specific stuff, but if you know when she's at home, when she's not at home, what her career is at Cosmo, where she is, you can then buy very specific stuff for specific times within a 2 or 3 block radius. You could buy them. So now I know this girl's favorite food, right? This was before people, all of this was surveillance. So we found her Pinterest page. Well, she likes tall guys. So, all right, Fred, now you're the tall guy. Let's go and get you a $300
Fred is
haircut.
6'7".
Yeah, he's a tall
Five,
motherfucker.
Are you
five. I'm
6'7" or
6'5".
6'5"?
I'm 6'5".
But with small
Okay.
feet,
Very small feet, size
weirdly
9.
small feet.
It ruined me being an athlete. I should have been an athlete, and instead I became a
Wait,
publicist.
so did you have to, so they sent you out to
Let
like
me
find the
finish.
influencer?
Let me finish. It wasn't the influencer. This was just an editor. So from there, we were able to take her, go to Uber, and find out that she was using Uber for her rides. So we knew her schedule in and out of work, when she would arrive, when she would come home.
This is
We
psychotic.
found out
This is
Pinterest, what
every
she
woman's
likes, what
worst
her
nightmare.
aesthetic was, what everything was. And guess what? My company paid for me to have a $3,000 suit. They paid for me to pretend like I lived in that building. We knew that she arrived on Thursdays at a very specific time from
Whoa.
Uber. So guess what, this chance meeting happened? Oh my God. We called Netflix and found out 70% of what you watch is rom-coms. Well, let's set up that situation where this beautiful 6'5" man happens to trip in front of you as you come out of your Uber, as you've had a long, tired day. And he knows that you love the local Greek restaurant and says, listen, this is so weird, but I don't think I've ever met anyone as beautiful as you in my entire life. And
Shut the fuck up. You are
would like to
ridiculous.
take you. I would like to take you. There's this little Greek spot that I know. It's just in the neighborhood. We can
Because
go to
you know
that
she likes Greek
because
food.
I know she orders from that restaurant from Uber Eats. But this was before there were laws. This was before there were laws in place to try and stop this stuff. Okay, but now I'm a different person for 2 weeks because I'm dating her for 2 weeks because that's what we figured out as a group together. Would
Fuck.
probably take before we should talk about what we do for a living. And all of a sudden comes up over a nice dinner over tapas. Oh, we never had the conversation of what you do. And she says, oh, well, I'm a junior editor at Cosmo Girl and I take care of the new product section. And I go, that's really weird because I work in the same industry in something I'm not going to say because that would give away a
Okay,
character that I
Brad,
built that
can
I
I
still
ask one
can't
question?
believe. Yeah,
Okay, so
this is
now
real.
I
By
am
the
a
way, this is a
41-year-old
real thing.
millennial. I have
Yeah.
stalked many a man. Okay, I
Yeah.
know everything about everybody. Your story actually does not surprise me at all. What
Okay.
surprises me so fucking much is that my past year as a Threads influencer, with all of the information that I have voluntarily barfed up on the internet about myself, why is every DM that I get from a man who wants to fuck me something like, hey, you have so much information about me.
Can I tell
You have
you?
so
They
much
don't.
information. You know what I like. You know everything about me. You could find it out in 5 minutes. You don't even have to work that hard.
That's
It's
an
all
effort
there
level.
on Threads.
Effort,
It's literally
yeah.
the only place
Emily,
on the internet you can
That's
find
an
me. And
Emily.
you come
That's
in
an
with,
effort level.
hey,
Do you want me to? I will send you a DM that would have gotten you. I can do that. I don't. I tell everyone I
thank
don't
you.
fuck
You
around
know
in the
what?
DMs.
I'm
But
just
it's
an
a
English
level of
teacher and this is a
okay.
writing prompt.
So
Gentlemen,
this is
if you want to do the assignment of sending me a DM that you think would actually get me to respond.
those guys send out 400 DMs a day.
It's
That's
so
the
like
difference. They
this is
send out
women's problem. It's
400
like it's
DMs.
so easy to court me. It's so easy to make me fall in love. You have that we live in a surveillance state.
They
Fool
send out
me.
400 DMs a day. Those
Find
guys will
my
send
friend.
out 400. They don't
Gentlemen.
believe that they're ever going to get your attention, so they need the bite before they start doing that, okay?
I
But
fucking
most people are
there's
not like
also an
me.
atrophy of conversation skills.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, there's
don't
an
yeah.
atrophy of conversation skills and it all leads directly to sex. So that's why you look at the people whose brains have atrophied, the 50-year-old plus, and the way that they interact versus someone like me whose brain is only mildly atrophied from drugs and concussions and total abuse. It's that they send dick pics and they send 400 of those and it's about them, not about you. Meanwhile, me, when
The
I
shotgun is
court
a terribly
someone,
efficient
You guys
weapon, but it kills
Yeah.
notwithstanding,
people.
men on the internet, you are so
no,
bad
no,
at
no,
what
no. Listen, I'm
It
part
kills
of this
people.
too.
If
I'm
you
part
want
of
to
it.
fuck, you
I did
can
these-
do it. You just have to Google. You just have to do a little searching. You just have to do a little reading, and it's so easy. You can get any.
I'm just letting you know. This is what I did. Back to what it was. This is what I did. So we're saying that this is new. This was pre-laws to stop this stuff that we were doing this. This is not new. This is a tale as old as time. We've been doing this to each other in the means of capitalism and business and getting what we want.
Just to
But it's
interject
also
though, women on
Yeah.
Bumble are not much better conversation.
No, they are.
Everyone's
Everyone's
the
terrible
at
girls
this thing
are
right
not
now.
reading books.
Everyone's
This
bad at
conversation is such a normal and simple conversation that, like, for anyone else, though, it's a fucking PhD dissertation.
Yeah, this is just
Right.
we.
I don't want to
we
Let's
toot
live
not
our
bring
own
in
horn,
PhDs
but
into this.
it's really, honey, it's just that this is a conversation. Like we're all at the bar right now, right?
Yeah, this is
Conversation has taken some wild turns. It's an authentic conversation. We're just all drinking at the bar on a
I will
Saturday
say,
afternoon.
this is Way's superpower. He manages to bring people together to have conversations.
So,
But it's not a podcast with an
No.
agenda.
Well, this is 3 podcasts actually. This is 3 podcasts that you should cut into 3 specific subjects that
that's
are
the
easily
neoliberalization
consumable.
going on for
Yeah.
you, Brad. And so the way that I met Brock, and the way that I met this really smart
Stop.
motherfucker. Thank you. It's from Starbucks, and I had this ability to just like if I see someone interesting, I'll just talk to them, and that's a superpower.
He does the autistic info dump, but he has interesting things he talks about.
I wish we were at a Starbucks. We could go for 6 hours. We could shut it down.
Yes.
There's a Starbucks in my
You've done
building
that.
and it's
Yeah, we have.
If-
Yeah,
If
actually,
you,
I
if
live
you
within a
believe
French
this,
culture,
that
we don't
Starbucks
fuck
at the
with Starbucks.
time was a 24-hour Starbucks.
yes,
Oh.
we
So
we
would
came
be in
at
there
like
from like 11 p.m. to 4 or 5 in the morning just talking shit.
talking
love
shit.
it.
Yes, and I saw this like big dude. I was like, huh, he looks cool. He had headphones on, a big ass afro, and a Android smartwatch, which was like very strange to me because like I have never seen this composition of a black dude before, and that's where kind of like the subversive nature of
Southeast Asian.
yeah.
Southeast Asian.
You could block his vibe based on what he consumed.
I was just like, this is a really interesting person right here, I'm gonna talk to him because I haven't. First of all, this is in 2015. There were not many
Yeah.
smartwatches then. This was before Apple Watch took the scene. This is when I was actually really jealous that Apple has not had a smartwatch yet. And this guy had a smartwatch, and I thought to myself, this is a new framework of information because I've been studying digital culture and social net and its philosophy since 2010, following Apple as my deity. Essentially, I follow every aspect of Apple, whether it's production, whether it's business, whether it's supply chain, whether it's Tim Cook and Steve Jobs. So that when I'm on Threads, when I'm talking about Apple shit, people should actually listen to me because I know my shit about Apple. So when I saw that this dude had a smartwatch, I was like, huh, this is really, really interesting because not many people have smartwatches. Second of all, this is a much older, no offense, Brock. This wasn't a dude in his 20s that had a smartwatch. This was a dude in his much later ages. No offense, Brock. That had a smartwatch, and that was fascinating to me because no one else had that configuration of outfits and of styles. And so from there, I talked to him, and then it turns out he's a scholar of technology and
He's a
culture, and I
nerd.
was just like, oh my god, yes, I was a complete nerd. This was
Talking about me, not you.
yeah, he's also a complete. He's also a complete nerd too. I think he
Wait,
was
wait. Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I'm actually going to post on Threads about this conversation, and I wanted to make sure that I had his correct
What's that?
username.
Oh,
So
he doesn't have Threads yet.
you're
Well,
not on
I
Threads
don't.
yet?
Of course
You
I do.
must. It's the
Guys,
worst
I
site
have
on the
everything
internet.
but Noster. I don't really fuck with Noster like that.
I'm gonna
BOC
interject.
B0C_DRE, I think is the right.
I'm
Wait,
gonna
Yeah.
never-
interject real quick, guys. It's been 2.5 hours. So I
Yeah.
actually do need to head out. So we'll let Brock tap in for me, and he can take my spot. Okay.
Pleasure meeting you.
A way smarter human being than me. I've just got good stories. So now you have a scholar and an intelligent man there who can speak to stuff that I can't. This has been wonderful. I hope that we do this again. Okay.
We will.
Yeah,
we
we
will.
clearly
All right,
have a lot
later,
to
guys.
say. Merry
Bye.
Christmas, Fred.
Merry Christmas. Joyeux Noël.
Sure.
Yes.
Woo!
Yes. So I was saying, so yeah, it turns out he's a scholar, and I was like, that's really cool. So we mostly talk about technology. We don't talk too much about philosophy much, but if obviously whenever I ask him questions, he'll be able to give me a pretty good open-ended answer in which I can do my own research, overall. But mostly we just mostly should talk about stuff about random stuff. But it was but his research has given me a lots of new lenses into observing digital culture, and especially talking about how digital culture has the potential of resistance, because a lot of the stuff we are seeing today, they're not new phenomena that occur during today's technological systems and advancements. It's been a historically documented situation for the last 200 or 300 years, with respect to social media, with respect to the evolution of social media, with respect to, actually maybe not 200 years, about in the last 100 years or so, there has been this dialogue for the last 100 years about what social media is and the power and potential of social media. And that really gives me hope, because I was also very cynical of the world that we're going towards, especially with AI and all that shit. I was having a conversation this morning and last night with someone on Threads about how AI is just taking over everything, and that's a very, very one-dimensional view of how AI as a singular power structure has the ability to kind of take over all the insights without regard for
Yeah, 'cause
humanity.
systems are so intractable and so difficult to move. AI is merely being applied over the top of existing power structures.
Mhm.
And I think honestly, one
Like Roy
example I
says,
can
it's
think of
also
is
an
banking
exacerbator.
infrastructure. Banking infrastructure has not fundamentally changed much in 25 years.
Yes. Right.
You know,
So
and so it's like applying AI on top of existing shit.
is amplifier.
Yeah.
What he was talking about. What Brock was just talking about. It's AI is just another amplification prison lens in which you can allow for different accelerations of the human process of control, of dialogue, of whatever. But right now there's also another huge problem, which is AI and energy consumption and AI and climate change and all that shit, which is another going to be a big factor in preventing AI from actually turning into AGI, which is going to take over everyone, blah 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 blah. So there's a lot of problematic notions of the reductive or too simplified notion of how powerful AI is without the human aspect of this shit. Holy fuck!
Glad you were able to get that out.
Thank you. That was very difficult. Yes.
You did fantastically.
And also, really, what was really stupid is I wasn't even talking to that motherfucker. I was talking to someone using ChatGPT. I was like, wait, this is a ChatGPT response right here, dog. Like, what the fuck?
I have never used ChatGPT before because I just feel like it's I just feel like it's a
Yeah.
Rubicon. You know, you got to cross the Rubicon. Like once you cross into ChatGPT, you're not going back. And
Yeah.
I look, you know, as a writer, as an English teacher, I think a lot of people expect me to be against it. I'm not. I haven't formed all my own opinions about AI yet, but I will say that I haven't used it yet because I do feel like it's a point of no return.
I feel like giving it a point of no return would turn it into a much more powerful thing, in which I don't think it is quite there. It's not
Fair.
it's not that it's a point of no return, but it's just it's another production of technology from whether it's Google or Wikipedia, or now it is just served information that's before by algorithmic tracking, such as SEOs, for example, is another precursor to this notion of AI being generated as content. But there is still this idea of the human being the center of the driver of information and insight production, without a human connection, without this being in the world, without a thinking, connected human being in the world.
Right.
There's still no there is no point for AI if there's no humanity, if there's no people. You cannot have an island. You cannot like a billionaire, one single billionaire, or even 10 billionaires on an island means collectively nothing if they don't have things to control and things to delegate and things to process. And
Let me
that's
add one more to this for you.
Yeah.
Nothing
You
without
can't have a
people,
mind
nothing.
without a body.
right. The mind without a body is a very good. It's also a very good Deleuze idea too. This idea of like this, and this goes back to the way that I'm using a mycelium network of connections rather than a top down network of like this person knows someone. The reason that the mycelium network of connections being how we connect with each other and how you connect with your family, and there's no linearity between those connections. It is between you and Brock is giving us readings now.
Oh my goodness. The
You know I do.
MIT press from 1992. Now I love the scholarship. I earnestly do. I really do. I think as an English teacher, AI is an incredible opportunity to go back to what I was talking about with Alexis Tocqueville. How do you pronounce that word?
Tocqueville.
Yeah, this idea of raising the standard, right? That AI, you know, at its best, it might be removing certain impediments to disadvantaged populations being able to express their thoughts. I think about, you know, people who speak English as a second language and needing to converse in English. You have this complexity of thought. Yes, Wei. I know I'm a white lady, but I'm so woke. Okay, I lived overseas as an immigrant. I taught English as a second language. I understand the frustration that comes with not being able to express yourself in this full, rich, nuanced way because you are speaking in language that is not your own. And I think that AI has, you know, that's one impediment to expression that AI really legitimately can remove. It's about raising the standard. However, when you increase the standard for the masses, you have a pendulum swing. you have a reaction against that because that access to power is not sustainable. You need to have that discipline, that punishment come back so that you preserve some kind of natural hierarchy,
Mhm.
right? And that is the problem. That's the problem of being alive.
Absolutely.
And that's a good point. And in addition to your multilingual aspect too, what's really fascinating as a multilingual is that you are able to. I am able to see different frameworks and different connections and different
Mhm.
styles of thinking in different languages. And even though I use ChatGPT and Cloud AI to do a lot of my translation stuff to talk to my parents, there is still this disconnect between the language um, of actual historical context versus a generated conversion of a language that you do not that is not quite 100% of your
Yeah.
of your context.
It's not
And
human.
it's not human. It's not human, but it's the very much a decontextualization or completely removed from the context of what does it mean to be human. To speak a language, it requires this historical relevance in which you have a dialogue with another person, and that becomes a dialogue with history. And when people a lot of the tech bros that says that, hey, AI is going to convert language translation into a universal thing, that's missing a lot of the nuances within language, and that's what makes that's missing a lot of the connections between language and humanity, and the way that we have to that removes the physicality of language from persons to just a thinking thing. An island.
Yes, and I mean, as somebody who loves, and to be clear, I only speak one language, unfortunately, but I do think that I speak English pretty well. It's the absolute finest nuances of communication because written language is so manipulative, right? There's such incredible power there to manipulate others through these subtle changes, but you can only achieve that power through an incredibly deep understanding of language. And that
Yeah.
is what concerns me with, to bring it down to a very real life example of now all this dating, people are meeting each other online. And so your first impression of each other is in a text-based medium. And so you are fundamentally disadvantaged from the jump if you are not comfortable in a text-based medium speaking the language that is spoken. Yes, you can use AI to help you in those initial interactions, but you will crash up against the terrifying reality of in-person communication. And I think that's honestly at the root of so much of what's happening in America right now. The discontent, the frustration. It's it's this raising of the standard.
Mhm.
And that and people are finding that without that AI assistance, they cannot meet that standard or maintain it.
It's
I
both.
feel like Putnam needs to update Bowling Alone for social media, and
Mhm.
particularly engagement algorithms. But dude,
Oh, I have not
you've been
read that one
saying
yet.
that, you would love it. Basically, his thesis is that with the rise of sprawl and the diminution of social institutions that used to knit us together, like bowling
Mhm.
leagues, we've become an
Mhm.
increasingly fragmented, alienated society. Uh,
Mm.
Yeah.
uh, and so I think social media definitely has something to do with that. One thing I'd like to say to fuck with people is that every communication technology is a romantic technology. There's so many people who have gotten married because of email threads or bulletin board systems, because there's something about writing letters back and forth, long form communication, that encourages this sense of intimacy. It becomes a virtual space in which you can get to, you think you know people, but there's been also
You
been so much
think.
catfishing done in those spaces as well. That's why grooming
Mhm.
happens so easily on those spaces. But yeah, people look for connection in every space they're in. It's one of the reasons why I write about things the way I do. I'm like, people bring themselves to every medium. And so if you're thinking that it's not productive or efficient, the usual reason is because people are too busy being people.
Oh,
People are too busy being people, and there are All right, you can speak, Emily. I'm thinking. Fuck.
I mean, I actually think that's a really powerful, thing. And I'm thinking about the transition because I would argue that Instagram is dying as a medium and text-based social media is kind of rising. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be Threads, but it's one example. However, your ability to find connection and love, which is arguably the only reason that any of us wake up in the morning, that inherently favors people with developed skills in those areas. If you've got texting Riz versus visual Riz. And I wonder, to bring it back to this question about influencing and influencer culture and the fakeness of it all. I'm really worried about 2025 and the ability for influencers to suddenly, now that their currency isn't so much about the visual, but it's about the actual text, the intellect, so to
But it's
speak.
also ironic
thought.
though.
Yeah.
But counterpoint to that is that the more people read and the more people understands what they're reading with respect to the humanities and the culture, that
You're
itself
Mhm.
that in it of itself becomes a form of a key to unlock away from this surveilled desire culture, because to learn how to speak is also to learn how to become human. The more you speak, the more you learn how to speak, the more you learn about history, stories, community action, all that shit.
But
That
the key is that you need to speak to another human. Interactions with
Yeah,
ChatGPT are not going to make that happen.
that is, yes,
exactly.
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 That dialogue requires people. So when you're saying that, Emily, when you're talking about how the new fad it will be to speak better, that's not quite the case. To speak better in what context? To speak better in terms of influencer culture, or to speak better from your soul, from your heart, from your community. And that is still the dangerous part between community and neoliberalism, is that
Yeah.
when you speak against when you speak from your community, you're going to be speaking against power. And and within Meta, even though Meta is a profit-driven motive, they still want to have this balance between becoming a Wild West for just of provision for the people, versus still being able to have control over the dialogues. And so I don't think they want to threaten people to say that, hey, this platform is too neoliberal or too commercialized. We still want you to produce your libidinal outputs, so that way we can still advertise torture libidinal desires, through ads, through buying products, through the actual manifestation of your words, from your words to products, right? That's how Meta creates the profit incentive. But they still have to balance with it with awesome authenticity
No, they
and
don't.
balance. They don't.
I'm pretty sure we had this conversation 10 years ago too.
Fuck.
You consider the origins of Facebook is that it's a horny Harvard freshman who is socially awkward and has difficulty meeting women. He creates a website where he takes advantage of people's fascination with then extant shitty digital cameras, the 4 megapixel digital cameras, and people wanting to upload their pictures. So now he gets to browse a network of young men on his college campus. So they're socially and culturally attractive, right? And he gets to see all their intimate photos without actually having to talk to them. So one of the crucial features that people don't talk about, you can still 20 years later proves Facebook pictures, people's photo albums on Facebook. Right? Instagram also has this functionality built in as well. It's a surveillance method, right? That's not talked about enough because it's so ingrained into our infrastructure. We don't think about it. If you think about it in terms of how would a horny 19-year-old be able to find attractive women without ever leaving the answer is Facebook. And
Right.
if you think about it from that perspective, that harnessing of a libidinal desire to have control over people without ever interacting with them, it explains how Facebook got captured by financialization and engagement algorithms to continue amplifying that particular drive, that libidinal drive, and then make money off of it in really pernicious ways, whether it's shopping, whether it's tuning the algorithm for certain types of engagement, whether it's the way in which they control discourse through content moderation policies.
Yes.
Back. And this is why I love talking about libidinal economy and technology, because people like, no, it's capitalistic. And I'm like, no, it's actually a bit no. Right, because capitalism doesn't have to be about desire. It really became
Right.
about desire when manufacturing capacity outstripped people's capacity to buy shit. You had to create desire in order to sell stuff.
Yes.
And what does that also sound like? Facebook and Instagram, right?
Yes.
Right. I'm
yes.
sorry, I didn't mean to lecture. Wade brings this shit out of me all the time.
No, this is good.
And so I think you're onto something, Wade, but I think if you add that additional dimension, all of a sudden you don't need to go deep into political economy or ideas about dark patterns or surveillance. If you think about in terms of desire and catharsis, what is the desire that Facebook embodies
Mhm.
electronically, digitally, right? And what does it offer the people who use it, right? Instagram is the
But-
same but more visual.
But that was also kind of the technology of desire that Apple also used within their marketing style. Is that
Different.
Apple was you said different, but I think
The only reason why I say it's different is Apple left that behind after the iPod era, the iTunes Music Store era, right?
Mhm.
It was trying to get everybody to use iTunes because that was how you connected to the iPod that you bought to hold your music. So it was
Right.
really pitching the idea that this iTunes Music would be a social space, but Apple sucks at social. As a matter of fact, iMessage is actually an example of Apple's interest working against itself, and they only realized it belatedly, right? Now they have people arguing over blue bubbles and green bubbles when there was a
Yes.
time when nobody would ever consider using Apple for any social thing because like people would just simply like they were trying
Apple
to sell different.
Apple has famously been bad at social media stuff. However, I think their marketing, the way that they prevent their advertisements and the way that they sell it has been counterintuitive to a lot of the ways that other technology companies now they're following Apple's footsteps and creating desire for people because they want to sell
Absolutely, Samsung,
family.
yes,
They want to
But-
sell.
aesthetics of streamlined technological desire.
Mhm.
Right? Make things shiny, make things pretty,
Mhm.
right? You make them curved in the same way that
Yep.
a woman's body is curved, right? You make them thin in the same way that the West fetishizes thinness.
Mhm.
You tell people that they're going to be smarter when they're using it, and that's been Apple's strategy for the last 15.
That everything is effortless
Mhm.
and
Yes.
streamlined and efficient.
Which
And
that was
meanwhile,
very
Android was trying to tell
counterintuitive
people
to
that
Android.
Yeah.
Android was trying to tell people, oh, you can be a hacker, you can root your phone.
A
People are like, well,
tinkerer.
what does it mean to root your phone, right?
An
Right.
otaku.
Listen, Samsung has been the closest Apple clone if you look at the way Samsung has
Yep.
modeled its advertising. But so many Android manufacturers don't really care about desire. They simply care about pumping out this commodity, this appliance that we now call the smartphone. So they don't
Mhm.
chase the dream in the same way that Apple manufactures. Sorry.
Yeah.
Still on Vyvanse, apparently. But
And
I'm
now
gonna
we
stop
have
running my
a
mouth because I
generation
feel
that
like I
doesn't
hijacked
know. Yeah, that doesn't. Well, everything has become so sexy, seamless, and streamlined that we now have a generation who is deficient in several literacies. And, you know,
The
I've
thing my
always,
students talk about is their primary thing why they use technologies is because it's convenient. Even when I show them that Google Maps tracks every movement they make, and I can discern the pattern of their everyday lives by simply having them show me how Google Maps tracks how they use GPS to get various destinations. They don't care.
No.
They just don't care because it's
it's
convenient.
become a fact of life. They've never known another reality, which is, I've always argued that, you know, Gen X, elder millennials, that age range has such an incredibly specific literacy in that we had one foot in the analog world where
Mhm.
it was, of course, you were still being tracked by
Quest.
various people, but it was not so pervasive. You have that analog and you have that digital understanding, and you can see how we moved from one to the next and how we have been habituated into accepting surveillance and also just barfing up innumerable private information about ourselves. We film ourselves crying.
Yes.
And
But that
explaining exactly why we're upset in this moment, and we put it on TikTok for anybody to see. And you're giving away so much of your power because you're allowing folks to psychologically manipulate you because they know what hurts you.
But
the
I
most.
feel like this also will also produce a new set of people, a new set of kids and growing up the newer kids growing up rebelling against this new system of constant surveillance and constant and privacy breakdown of shits. I feel like there are examples of kids who are anti Facebook, who are so analog that they're going back to fucking film cameras, and there's a rise of
Text
of
off. Yeah.
The
a rise of
authenticity
text
phase.
exactly.
Yeah,
and
they're
and this
looking
is
for
why
authenticity.
they're looking for authenticity, and you cannot sell you cannot really even with artificial intelligence, even with 3D printing, there's still a difference between a product, a desirable product, a desirable quote unquote authentic product that comes from an automatic machine versus a hand painted mural, for example. In this age of digitization, which is just kind of, it's still currently, I think, an extension of the digitalization of, for example, Photoshop and creative technologies. It is still not quite there yet for AI to generate actual libidinal desires at a authentic level outside of the current version of, let's say, Coca-Cola's AI generated ads. Ads will be generated in AI in the next few years. I don't doubt that. However, I think there is going to be a gradient effect that's going to be constantly revolting against this notion of digitalization from an inauthentic source of libidinal creation and desires. I think the humanities aspect is still very, very strong and powerful, even though we are constantly being entrenched by these technologies of surveillance and technologies of analytics and yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm not gonna sleep tonight.
Good. Lots of
Because
lots of stuff to think about.
I'm going to be thinking about my Threads presence and about how, oh God, what have I said? What have I done? I've published to the Fediverse. It's out there, it's forever.
Yeah, you can
I
believe
have
that
already
shit's
crossed a
terrifying.
certain Rubicon.
Nice to
This
see
is
you.
so
I'm gonna take
good.
off. It was a pleasure talking to you, meeting you, Emily. Wait, it's always a pleasure.
Yes.
And
Wow, 2.5
Well,
hours
again.
later, I think we've done okay. I think
Yeah, not
we've
bad.
scratched the
This
surface, but
this
there's
chat isn't going to be ad sponsors available, but you know what? That's okay.
no, this was an organic conversation if ever there was one.
And
We went
happy
down some rabbit
holidays to
holes.
y'all. Way, I'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, thanks, Brock. All right, Emily. Good chat.
Happy Saturday, everyone. Happy New Year. I will see
Thank
you.
you.
Wait, I'll see you on Threads. It was
Yes.
great. Thank you so much, guys.
Peace.
Bye.